na.
Welcome to WKIM Media Network. Thank you all for your patience. You know, if it's one thing, it's another. And so we were dealing with a little bit of technical difficulty, but Katanya, our producer, Katanya Lester, is handling her business, and we are grateful. Thank you, Katanya. So we have a full show, ladies and gentlemen, and I'm so tickled. I don't know what to do. You know, too often, we think that we know what we're doing and we're so steadfast. And then all of a sudden you realize that there are people who really want to be part of of this show. They really like it. They like what they see. They like what they hear. And we are bringing them on as fast as we can. And so tonight, we kick it off at 5:00 because we have a guest who had some challenges with times, and we just said, well, we can move it. That's what we can do. We have that flexibility over here with WKIM Media Network. So we have 4 guests tonight, and our first guest, and I'm so excited about this, Nicole Mosby Taylor is the executive director and founder of Empowering Minds of Maryland's Youth, also known as Emmy, and the Girls Mentoring Group, the Powerful Voices of Young Ladies. She also co-founded and developed the Leadership Academy program. She's worked selfishly to dispel low esteem, suicidal ideation, and other social ill plagues that plague middle and high school girls. She's empowered over 1,000 young ladies with self-love, constant confidence, and critical thinking. Nicole also is the founder of Empowered Women in Business International, EWBI, which creates community-based networks of women to empower and educate entrepreneurs and professionals across the globe. She's the host of the EBWI radio show. Mrs. Mosby Taylor co-partnered and created Empowered to Stand Health Services, ESHS mission is to empower, educate, and motivate individuals, families, and communities to stand independently and collectively with confidence. She earned her Bachelor of Arts in Social Work from Sojourner Douglas College, is currently pursuing a master's in social work at Walden University. She desires to empower and equip our youth with awareness of our society, which will afford them the opportunity to make intellectual choices for future success. This commitment for youth led her to create the Stamp Out Bullying campaign, a forum where youth can learn more about strategies to prevent bullying. Mrs. Mosby Taylor attended Life Coach School of Arkansas, where she received her certification as a life coach. She and her husband, Damon Taylor, co-author a book, Money Talks. It uncut combos with power couples about love, money, and entrepreneurship. She was formerly served as the Dating Matters student implementer for Johns Hopkins University and Baltimore City Health Department, and was a former Eucharistic minister for St. Matthew Roman Catholic Church. She also is the recipient of the Job Foundation's Recognition Award for Outstanding Service, the Women of Power Award in 2013. She is a member of the Baltimore Teachers Union Women's Rights Award, the Vital Magazine Recognition Award for Outstanding Community Service, certificate of recognition signed by Senator Barbara Mikulski, and she's a proud member of Zeta Phi Beta Incorporated and has an Alpha Zeta Woman of the Year Award for community service. She's married to the very supportive Damon Taylor, and they share 3 amazing daughters. She believes if we reach out to a child and help them achieve their dreams, then God will help us achieve ours. Thank you very much for this bio. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you for having me.
Girl, you are staying busy. I don't know how you have time for anything as busy as you are.
I know. Sometimes I wonder that too. But when God gives it to you, He gives you the time to make it happen too.
That's exactly right. And I've been watching you and I've attended some of your events. You are really focused on empowering not only the young girls, but the community. Where did you get this from? Where did this come from? This
honestly
giving. Yes.
Well, I first noticed it when I was younger. My mom was the same way. She really instilled it in my brother and I. And just watching her as a youth, she was amazing, always giving, and sometimes giving to her detriment, and the family's detriment. But she knew it would help someone else out, so she did it without even blinking an eye. And so I know that that's definitely where I got it from. And it later on was revealed to me in a dream. God kept coming to me in a dream when I first started my program for young girls, so that I would start my program, Empowering Minds of Maryland's Youth. And he just kept coming to me in this dream, and he would tell me what to do, what to say. And at that time, I wasn't a public speaker, wasn't interested in speaking, wasn't interested in facilitating in front of a group. And lo and behold, it wasn't about what I wanted, but rather, following what the plan was for me. So.
And so, God always has a bigger plan, right? When you think that, you think you got it going on, the Lord will take you in a totally different direction. Didn't have nothing to do with the original plan, right?
Oh, yeah. When I was in high school, one of my teachers sent a book home to me for graduation as a graduation gift. And inside she said something to the effect of, I would be working with children. She knew I was going to work with children. And so in the back of my mind, I was like, oh, that was so nice. She sent this book, but she is so wrong, because you can't make any money working with kids. I'm not working with children. And lo and behold, what am I doing? Working with kids. And I love it.
See, I think this is really interesting because you created an organization to empower young girls, right? Yes. That whole thing. What were you seeing? There was clearly a void somewhere. What were you seeing to get you to this place?
I was seeing girls walk around and not love themselves. I was seeing them disrespect their bodies, disrespecting elders around them. And, that was very troubling to me. And because of it, and me having, not to mention me having 3 daughters, I wanted to be a blessing to young ladies. And I know I had trouble talking to my mom about certain things also, which most youth, have those have the difficulty, that barrier, talking to their mom. And so I wanted to create a mentoring program where they felt comfortable coming to get the right information from someone. Everybody doesn't have a loving family where you can entrust. So what I did is I entrusted a family member for my girls to feel comfortable with going to, if they didn't feel comfortable coming to me. Everybody doesn't have that. So I wanted to create a mentoring program where the young ladies felt like they could come and share, whatever it was with me. And because of that, we have been able to help, oh my goodness, so many of them that were contemplating suicide and that were not loving themselves. And even one young lady that comes to mind, when she first came to our program, she wouldn't look in the mirror at herself. And by the time the 6-week summer camp was over, I had to keep sending for her out of the bathroom because she was in the mirror.
I love it. I love it. But what is it? So not everybody has that gift to be able to touch the hearts of young people who have dealt with abuse, be it mental, physical, or emotional. Abuse is still abuse, and it leaves horrific scars either in your mind, your body, or your spirit. How are you identifying these young women to bring into your program?
So we work with anyone. It doesn't matter the age, the race, the social economics in the household. We found that they all can learn from each other. And because we have that type of group, it's been a phenomenal experience, not only for the leaders of the group, but for the young ladies, because they've been able to pull from each other to get and to find their strengths.
Mm-hmm. So one day you were just sitting trying to think about how you were going to change the world. and this nugget the Lord dropped in your spirit. How did it, and then you had to develop it, right?
Right. So honestly, while in college, I worked at a club as a bouncer. And
I can't even see you. You probably did it. So, honey, would you please go?
That wasn't quite me back then, but
Oh, okay, because that's the Nicole I know would be so sweet. So there's another,
oh, thank you.
I gave my other personality a name, so
Well, we're not going to talk about that personality.
No. It took too long to get out of that.
So when I worked at this club, I noticed that the young ladies had a pair of underwear and a toothbrush in their purses, and it was several. Like, I mean, almost everyone I checked. So I went to one of the other bouncers, and I'm like, why do all of these young ladies have a pair of underwear and a toothbrush? And they said, because they plan on hooking up with somebody and not going home. And so that was enough for me to know, that didn't sit well for me. And that was enough for me to know, we're not respecting ourselves. And I know I can't reach the world, but, whether I do it on a micro or macro or meso level, I knew that God had placed it in my heart to start to do something. So I gathered a group of girls together, and I started a group, grassroots, right out of my home. It was my daughter and some of her friends and some of the girls that went to school with her. And we started the group, and they named the group the Powerful Voices of Young Ladies. And so it began. And actually, our very first president is now a school teacher, and our very first vice president is the owner. I'm sorry, she was a school teacher. Now she owns a daycare center. And then the vice president is the owner of a cosmetic lab. She is a cosmetic chemist, and she makes all types of cosmetic products. So they're doing phenomenal. I keep in touch with all my young ladies. And over the years, of course, I forget names sometimes. I feel terrible, so I call everybody sweetie.
I understand that concept.
But it really warms my heart to see them come back and share and invite me to graduations and weddings and birthdays and proms, and it just warms my heart because it just tells me that this is really where I'm supposed to be.
Now, all of these young people, are they still in high school, or do you get them at junior high, or when do you start receiving participants?
I started, most of our programs start middle school, and they work towards middle and high school. So we have the high school young ladies help to mentor the middle school young ladies. And then as they matriculate through college, they come back and help the young ladies that are sitting in the same seats they once sat in. And that's how we started our gala.
Mm-hmm.
We have an annual gala, collegiate scholarship gala called the Orangeman Jones Scholarship Gala. And that gala is actually taking place November the 12th this year at the Residence Inn at Johns Hopkins.
Nice.
And the gala is amazing because it's a twofold event. So, one, we give one of our young ladies a collegiate scholarship, but the other part of it is we recognize other small nonprofits and organizations or individuals that are doing good works for youth and empowering youth in our communities.
So, in identifying what is the process by which you bring young people, for those who are in the audience paying attention, how do you recruit these young people? What are you looking for in them that the process would include them?
So any young lady that's within our age bracket is accepted. So we don't turn anyone away, no matter what. Even if we have to find sponsorships, but we don't turn anyone away. And they would just have to fill the age. So right now we're in the process of doing a cotillion. So with the cotillion won't take place until next year. And this is our first one, so we're super excited. But the cotillion, we're looking for middle and high school students to take part. We have workshops set up for them. And then the 11th graders and the 12th graders will take a stronger role, of course, with the cotillion because they'll be the ones that will be introduced. And then the seniors will go after receiving the scholarship. But they'll learn etiquette, how to do certain dances, and an array of different topics from self-esteem to STEM projects. So that's the great thing about our programs is that we want to open and expand their horizon, no matter where they come from. We deal with a lot of at-risk youth as well as youth that may be a little more well-off than others. But it's about exposing them to things that they've never had an opportunity to be exposed to.
Mm-hmm. Now, do they get involved in the summer with the summer camp, or if this is after school or just on weekends? How does the program run?
So the cotillion will be running. We are actually in the process of scheduling the interest meeting for parents. So if we have any parents that are interested, give us a call and we'll definitely keep you posted on our interest meeting date. But we're going to meet once a month up until June, and then it'll take place in June.
Mm-hmm. What made you decide to do the cotillion? Why was this so important?
It goes back to when I first started the program and seeing young ladies not acting like young ladies.
Mm.
People
What
not
does that
knowing
mean? Wait a minute. What do you mean they ain't acting like they ain't acting like the young ladies? What they doing?
Listen, the social we're missing that social etiquette, etiquette that was taught to us, at a very young age. And I think it's because of the age of moms now, I guess that's missing, because of with the impoverished communities, a lot of the children are raising themselves. So they miss those trainings that we had, don't put your elbows on the table while you're eating. Don't talk with food in your mouth. We weren't even allowed to throw trash in our, in our house, outside of our house. You know how some people, they'll just, pitch it as they walk. We weren't allowed to do that. We were taught that you don't do that. You take care of your neighborhood and your community. And so that's what's missing now. And I felt like the cotillion is a great opportunity for them to learn some of those old traditions that should never go away.
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. Do you work in tandem with the Baltimore City school systems?
We have had several mentoring groups within Baltimore City Schools. It's difficult to, there's a hiring shortage. No matter how many people are actually unemployed, it's difficult to find, people to replace you. And so we've tried to locate some other people to put in the schools, but we haven't been successful yet. So we've been in the school system from 2008 until right before COVID.
Wow. That's a long time for you to be doing this type of work in the system. How and with such a turnover with the CEO chair has had it been a revolving door for real.
Yeah.
And so in planting your organization into a public school system, what would you think would be the best outcome for a gathering place? Because that's a great place to recruit, to develop and train right in those spaces.
Right, right. It is a great opportunity to work side by side with the schools. You get to see their challenges. You get to see the successes that you don't get to hear about as often as you do the challenges. Um, but we just had to decide what was best for the organization at this time, because we wear so many different hats. You know about wearing so many different hats. You just have to pick which hat are you going to wear, which one are you going to keep it going. And so we decided not to be in the school system this year and to move the program to a weekend program for this year, coming off of COVID. So, COVID made everything a little strange and crazy.
Oh, the world is upside down with COVID.
Yes.
I mean, I have been hibernating for 2 years and some change. She who stayed in the streets. So this has been a real interesting time. It's really kind of scary because you can't put your arms around it. You can't see it. You don't know what to do with it or where it is. Or, come on. It's like a lot. But now, but in looking at that, with the challenges that you have in the school system, with the COVID, how are you managing your programs in this COVID environment?
So we still try to have safe. For a while, we were virtual. We even did a virtual mother-daughter tea that your beautiful producer took part in, Katanya.
Yes.
We we did a virtual entrepreneurship program where we had some young people all under the age of 30 who came and kind of dropped some knowledge and some jewels, some nuggets, golden nuggets on some of the youth. And the youth were able to ask them any questions that they wanted about, starting a business. And it was really powerful. It was very, very good panel. We also, so just doing virtual and, we haven't went hybrid, but we are more, listening to the kids' needs. It sounds like they want in person now.
You're ready.
So we've switched to in person. We just try to do it safer, making sure we wiping down, they, spaced apart, things of that sort.
Mm-hmm. So what's the long range goal here? You've got how many young people are in your program and how long do they stay within the program?
So they stay as long as they like, but we normally get them in 6th grade, and then they are able to matriculate all the way through high school. And then, like I said, they can come back and help out with once they're in college. Just depending on which college they go to will depend on if they're able to help out or not. The ones that aren't, they normally find some type of way to come back and at least see and visit and, talk to the girls. Which is an amazing thing. So just doing this for so long, my goodness, I'm just thinking about how the girls come back, and it's so amazing. But let me get back to your question.
No, I think it's wonderful that you're actually reflecting on that because, too often we're moving so fast, we don't even have the time to reflect. But out of those reflections, what are your takeaways that you've seen?
The takeaways I see, they're listening. So, it's just like talking to your own children. Sometimes you talk to them and not lecture, but just have conversations, because you want to kind of hear where they're what's on their mind, what are their dreams, where are their goals, do they know how to set goals. And we do a lot of talking about how to achieve the goals that you set. One of the first things we do is ask them, what are your goals? Have that kind of conversation, because so many of our babies aren't dreaming. They don't know how to create goals. So we teach them how to create their goals. And then, being able to see them achieve those goals through life is so rewarding. Like, money could never repay me for the reward of seeing them achieve the goals, the reward for saving the lives of the young ladies who aren't contemplating suicide any longer or attempting suicide, that those types of things. So, excuse me. Excuse me. It's just so rewarding. And even the parents, they keep in contact, and they'll send me a message, or just really thanking me for my help. One young lady comes to mind, and this young lady in particular, she wasn't able to. I met her in 6th grade. She attended our program 6th grade, and then during the summertime, we normally didn't have a program. So 6th grade, she would come. 7th grade, she came, and then the beginning of 8th grade, she told me, "I don't know if I'm gonna be in the group this year." And I said, "Really?" And so we talked, and she said, "I'm gonna think about it." And we noticed her attendance was very poor. Her grades suffered, and it was a difficult transition for her. She had a lot going on at home, but I kept checking on her, even though she wasn't attending the group. Long story short, we were able to set up a plan for her. We had a heart to heart, and that heart to heart was like, what does life look like after this? So let's say you drop out 8th grade. What does that look like for you? And after our heart to heart, we came up with a plan. We met with the principal and the teachers, and we were able to get her to be able to graduate. Not only was she coming to school, but she was coming on time to school. And she graduated from high school in the top 3 of her class.
Right on, girl. That's
Yeah,
huge. That's huge.
so
That's
those
huge.
are the reflections that even during the bad time, keeps me just keep doing what I'm doing.
I was years ago, I worked with this nonprofit, and it was a dance company that we brought to Baltimore. And we had the camp in the summer. And then we decided that we would take the camp into the school year, right? And do it out on the university campus and whatever. And and these were like, quote unquote, everybody says at risk, right? And you know what it means at risk, but you don't really know what it means at risk, right? You don't really get it. And this young man, he had been playing basketball. We were out at UMBC. And, I started talking to him because he seemed just a little detached, right? Like just off to himself. And so, I was like, "What's up? How you doing?" And, I'm myself, Marcia, always got something to say, talking to. And I said, "Why don't we think about what's going to happen after this? And, what are we going to do?" He said, "Miss Marcia, why are you always trying to talk all that stuff? I don't even see me living past 15.
Wow.
Right? I don't see me living past 15.
Mm.
I take a little girl home. She lives in one of the alley streets in West Baltimore. This was years ago, so that was like late 90s, right? And they'll always be in my brain forever. And I pull up to her house, and so you look at the door, the a quarter of the door from the bottom there's no door.
Mm.
There's no door.
Wow.
There's no a dog, a human, anybody could go in the house. And so I said, well, turn on the light because it's fall. Turn on the light when you get in. And so, she had a key. She could have crawled under there if she wanted to. It was big enough.
Mm.
She had a key. She unlocked the door. And I said, well, turn on the light when you get in.
No lights.
No electricity.
Mm.
And I sat there. I'm in this alley. I'm sitting there. How long do I have to wait? And I was there over an hour just sitting in the dark. And her parents, nobody showed up.
Yeah.
Right? And she wouldn't leave and go anywhere else because she was told she can't leave the house, lock the door. And it doesn't matter who I am. You get in that house, lock the door, and don't come out. That's the instruction. So I'm saying, and those are two memories that will be with me for the rest of my life.
Oh, and I'm sure you have plenty others. Because I do. I could tell you, trying to go feed them at night, the mom and the children, getting a phone call. I know it had to be every bit of like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and they were hungry. And there's no way in the world I could go to bed, with a full stomach, knowing that somebody was out there hungry. So I got up and I went and I was able to find them something to eat and took it to them. But, like the list of stories can go on. And, even the story I shared about the young lady, I could have told you so many other things that took place within that healing of the young lady, people just don't know the work that you do. And that's one of the reasons why, my board and I wanted to take time out to honor smaller nonprofits, because you always hear about these big organizations that gets all of this money to do what they do. And I'm not saying they're not doing it, but I'm saying that it's a lot of small organizations that I see boots on the ground that's really getting the work done, that doesn't get the acknowledgement for what they do by empowering our youth. And that's why we host our gala every year. And, anyone who has attended, they've always been very surprised because we, pull out all the stops, because we want the people attending to feel like the stars that they are in these babies' lives, because we're the ones that's helping to empower our community.
Excuse me. I think that the gala is a big deal, and I'd like for everybody to know. Would you please give everybody your website or how to get in touch with you to buy tickets and to come or to sponsor? So, when we sit down and we have these conversations, there's a reason why we have this conversation. It's not just to say, oh, here's the party. The conversation is, here is an opportunity for all of these people who are in leadership roles around the city that have those big budgets need to start looking beyond those major nonprofit institutions and look at the people who are actually doing the work that are realistically touching the lives, not only of those young girls and young people, but their parents are being impacted by what you're sowing into their children.
Definitely.
Right?
That's so true.
And so let's talk about this event coming up and what people need to do. I'm going to type it. What's the website? Or
www.untitled empoweringyouthusa.net. So that's www.empoweringyouthusa.net.
I actually did it right. Oh, that's good. And so this is coming up. I have the flyer is in the newsletter that I went out today.
Awesome. Thank you.
Both of them. And so let's talk about what those flyers are saying. What is that? What's happening?
Okay, so the first event is our suitcase drive. So the suitcase drive is happening October the 9th at Empowered to Stand Health Services, which is located 8110 Harford Road, Suite B as in boy, and that's 21234. So I know some people are like, suitcase drive. What is a suitcase drive?
Yes.
So for the ones who don't know, a suitcase drive is we collect brand new suitcases because our foster care youth go from home to home with a trash bag. And in that trash bag, they'll have their items. And we're sending them a subliminal message. We're sending them the message that their items are trash. And Emmy wants to be that leader to dispel that image and say your items are not trash, just like you're not trash. You are worthy, you are beautiful, and you are loved. So we want to give them a brand new suitcase. This will be the first year that we add toiletries too.
I love it. So you're getting new suitcases and giving them so that when they have to make that next move.
Transition, yes. It makes it that little much better for them.
Can you speak to them having to make that move? Can you talk about what that looks like and what happens? Why there's such a movement?
So typically, a child can be moved from one home to another for an array of reasons, stemming from something the child could have done, or just the relationship between the child and the foster parent, or it could be an array of reasons. But could you imagine being this child and knowing that you're about to live in another house with people you don't know, in a room that you don't know, you could be sharing with somebody else, having to share your private space with somebody else, a bathroom, your bedroom. It's a scary thing for our foster care babies. And if we could bring them just that little bit of joy, just so that they could have this suitcase to travel with them when they go to that home, to drag their items in the to wheel their items in the suitcase, to just give them that little more comfort as they go to that new home, and to have a place that's theirs, that they can store their things. Because they're going to this home, and sometimes people tell them, this is your room, but is it really their room? This is your drawer, but is it really their drawer? Do they feel like this place is home? I'm sure some loving foster care families do treat them as if it is their home, but the realistic picture is that there are a lot of foster care places that are just doing it for the paycheck, and the children feel it. And so if we can just provide them with that little sense of joy, to have something of their own, that they can take care of their properties and put it into the suitcase, it's just such a blessing to them.
How did you even think of this?
Honestly, it wasn't my idea. It was one of my board members, Miss Lorraine Hanson. She said, I have a great idea. And so we even put it in memory of her mom, Dolores Hanson, and her aunt, because they were always helping children as they, matriculated through life. So she asked, could we, do it in memory? So it was her idea. I just helped her to embellish it a little bit. And we've been doing it for like 6 years now. The last couple of years, we've been pleased to announce that Steve and Marjorie Harvey Foundation has signed on and helped us to help to sponsor the event as well.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes, yes.
Outstanding. And that's huge, right? So now
Yes.
that's got a national appeal. So
Right.
maybe that concept, now that you've got a national footprint, is a nice little thing to start thinking about doing in other locations and having chapters in other cities.
We have talked about that, and that is definitely in our future.
Mm-hmm. I think what's the sad part, we think that the United States is such this great place, right? It's, we have all this wonder and money, and we have all of these things that a third world country wouldn't have, when in fact our behavior is such as a third world in how we treat our children, the children that we have and the children that go into the system.
Yeah.
How and the impact that it has on those young people, not only for the moment, the impact for that moment, that the stress of living and going through all of that crisis, right? But then you've got to still deal with all of the people outside of that environment who really could care less what happens to you. They don't see the pain because it's foreign to them, right?
And they don't try to either. They don't try to see the pain. They don't try to put themselves in that child's, position and understand. We look at these children. When I hear a child on the news, and I hear they've done something, what comes to my mind is, what's going on in the house, what's going on, because some of the things, I just heard about two 12-year-old girls plotting to premeditated murder, to kill their fathers. That's not normal. Something is going on in those households. That's not normal. Something is going on with those girls. I don't know if it's mentally, they need some therapy. I don't know if somebody's touching them. Something is going on in those houses, and I can tell you that because I interned with DJS in a special unit called the FIT unit, which was the female intervention team, I think. Right, FIT, female intervention team, I believe. And I would say 98% of the young ladies that we work with had some type of sexual or physical, some type of abuse that took place to them.
And they were able to actually articulate that to you.
Oh yeah, and some of them, they were articulated like it was nothing.
What do you
And
mean?
those were the ones that they would just say it like you're just talking about brushing your teeth. That's a problem. So you're not showing any, there's no connection with it. It's almost like you're talking about somebody else and not yourself. And then there were other ones that were, you could see the emotional strain as they shared with you. But yeah, that it's so sad. And it takes organizations like the one you worked with, the nonprofit, and the one I have, and some of the other ones, for us to really put a a change out there. And it starts with one youth at a time.
And it really does. And the thing of it is, that whole experience for me, you hear about it. You go through the different programs that are, trying to make certain that, people in the community really understand what's going on in places where you're not normally visiting, right? But once you get an idea and once you put your foot in that water, it's hard not to just jump in all the way into that pool. We have far too many children, particularly now, and looking at, you talk about COVID earlier, right? How are these children functioning in COVID? They don't have access to the internet. They don't have a computer at home. The schools are closed, or they're freezing cold in the schools. Or wait a minute, we may not even have any electricity or heat in my own house.
That's right.
Right? And so this is just Baltimore, but this is not where it begins or ends. This is happening across the country, not to mention the world in so many different places that you are in an underserved zip code. You are going to have to fight for what you want, or somebody's going to have to fight for you.
And the sad thing is that no matter what zip code you live in, you should be able to receive the same level of education all the way around. And that's not what's happening.
At all.
That's a shame. And it's not just in Baltimore.
No, you're absolutely right. And there has to be a paradigm shift at some place. We elect, so I'm not going to get political, but at some point we really have to deal with the people that we put in office to be able to be present enough to see the pain that our young people are going through.
Well, part of the issue is, yes, it is a part of their responsibility as we elect them, but part of it is us. And, we want to point the finger at the elected officials, but we got to point it at ourselves too, because we allow certain things to happen. And if we come together, like in other communities, they come together and say, oh, no, you won't, then guess what? It won't happen. But we can't come together because we want to argue about who's going to be the head.
All that foolishness.
Yeah. And it's hurting our babies, and it, and it shows in our communities. And until we decide to really come together, back in the day, that's why they got things accomplished, because it wasn't, well, I'm sure they had issues with leadership, but it wasn't as bad. They allowed somebody to be the head and lead them. But now we, even when we have someone who is out there that's marching for us, we turn our back on them sometimes because, it's not about us, or how, they didn't do this for us, so I'm not helping them,
That's that ego.
The pettiness. Yes. So, it's just, we could go on. That could be a whole nother
show.
That's
a whole show, girl. We're going to have to do a round table. We have to do a round table on that one, girl, because there's some stuff we need to just sit down and get it out, and then sit down and have some kind of solution-driven seminar or something, because this right here is not acceptable.
See, so many people want to talk about what the problem is, but they don't never want to talk about what is the solution and what are the steps to get to that solution.
And bring the people and to bring the people to the table who know what the solution is. And you can't let your ego get in the way of bringing the right person to the table to get, so it's a circle. It's a crazy cycle. In the meantime, we have families that are hurting, that are really in pain, that if we just drop that shield, let that ego, they used to say back in the day, check your ego at the door.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And let's start making changes for our children, period.
Right. For our future. For our children's children. Do we not realize what's going on? That we're just setting things up for failure, just like they talk about crime, like it's because of people that's in leadership now. But crime has a lot to do with not only leadership, but it's not from just right this second.
Right.
This has been a buildup, and we're on the onset of a recession. And history shows that on the onset of a recession, we better buckle down, because crime is going to kick up probably another 50%. And that's just what happens, because people become desperate.
That's right.
And
they're struggling. They really are.
Yeah.
Everybody's struggling.
Do I go and rob this store, or do I, so that I can feed my family, or do I watch my family go hungry?
Right. Period. And I don't care about you and your household. I'm going to deal with mine. That's the bottom line. And so if we're looking at this is a part of the major problem, then what services are we dealing with? What programs? What's the strategy to impact the people who are being impacted by a COVID, by this recession? And everybody is. People's lives are different.
Correct. And nobody's addressing it. So we had things in place when COVID was, first, reared its ugly head. But the people that still having, side effects from COVID that can't work full time anymore because they're on breathing treatments and, all types of things. And it's changed their quality of life. And there's nothing in place for them. There's nothing in place for them. People lost their job, and once that first amount of whatever that time frame they extended it, once that's over, then it's like, oh wow. But
Right.
do you understand this was somebody's livelihood? They made a certain amount of money, and sometimes unemployment doesn't cover the amount that they were making. But you just want them to just take any job just so that they can say that they're working. But that's not going to help to take care of their lifestyle, their children's lifestyle. So
at
there's so many
a base level.
right.
They're already at a base level. So you can't even talk about the lifestyle. What lifestyle? We're just trying to get, can I have some cornbread for the next 3 days, 4 days, 5 days? This is bigger than what we're looking at and having. This is poverty. And we've created this poverty. So there has to be something to abate this problem.
Right. You're so right. You're so right.
Okay, so we're gonna have you back so we can have some more of this. This is in-depth conversation. So we're gonna have a sidebar conversation. So I see what happened to it? Foster care. I just had it. See, this is what I tickle myself. Girl, I had the whole thing sitting here and then I touched it. I just touched it. I only touched it for a second. Just touched it for a second. It's just 1 second. Let's see what happens right here. Oh, here it is. Okay. Let's see. Nope, that's not the one. Start talking about them. I'm gonna find the one that has the pictures on the bottom of it, and I sent it out twice, but I don't have the ones. Go ahead, talk to them.
So Empowering Minds of Maryland's Youth, Emmy, is hosting our I think this is our 6th or 7th. I'm sorry, due to COVID we lost track of which number, but this will be our annual suitcase drive. And the annual suitcase drive, we're asking for brand new suitcases, different sizes, because the children come different sizes and we want to bless all of them. Different colors, different styles. So there's something for everyone. The suitcase we'll have toiletries inside of the suitcases, and we're going to bless foster care youth on October the 9th, right here at Empowered to Stand Health Services, 8110 Harford Road, Suite B, and the zip code is 21234. The number is 443-733-3911. 443-733-3911. You can give us a call. We're also hosting our gala, the Orangeman Jones Collegiate Scholarship Gala for youth. We want to be a blessing to one of our youth who have come back to help the very youth that are sitting in the seats they once sat in. So if you would like to sponsor a youth, if you can't make it, you can make a donation. But it's an amazing event for the youth to take part of, as well as for the adults that we award for their work with empowering youth. Okay. So the name of that is the Orangeman Jones Collegiate Scholarship, and we give out those Emmys once a year. So this year it'll be November the 12th, 7:00 at the Residence Inn Marriott at Johns Hopkins.
Okay. And so, that's up on the top floor. You can see the whole city. That's a beautiful location.
Yes, it is. You can see the whole city is beautiful.
And it's Black owned.
Yes, it is. That's why we keep going back.
I know.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to this drop off. 8110 Harford Road, Suite B in Parkville, 21234.
Yes.
And so what we'll do, I'll just keep this in our newsletter. So we'll just keep it, because I can't imagine that they'll stop receiving them if somebody drops it off, right?
No, we don't. But we try to just keep it around that time, because we gather all of the suitcases. We keep them for 14 days so that they be quarantined, and then we take them out to the foster care youth to bless the foster care youth with them.
Oh, that's wonderful. I
Thank
didn't know you were doing all this, Nicole. I'm
Oh,
so proud
thank
of
you.
you. This is absolutely wonderful.
Thank you so much. And then I do have Passion, Purpose, and Pumps coming up in February. That's not till February, so I could come back on and talk about it. But Empowered Women in Business International. You remember, Marsha, you were our host, our fabulous host that one year.
Thank you. I'll come back.
Yes, we would love that. We would love that. But the event is so amazing because we believe, and as the quote says, being fulfilled is to find your passion, let it lead you to your purpose, and walk it out in your pumps. So we're going to fill women in a holistic way with so many different things, from self-esteem workshops to business credit workshops. Anything surrounding the holistic woman and her business, to provide them with those gems, so that they can move to the next level within their craft.
And that's critical. And sometimes you just need to have the other people around you supporting you, holding you up so that you can make that next move. Right?
Yes.
That encourages.
That's what it's all about. So Empowered Women in Business International, we are a network of a sisterhood that come together to help support us, supporting us. And our motto is, individually you can do great things, but collectively we can forever change the world, by Nick Mosby. So that sums it up. If we all come together, could you imagine what a world this would be?
Sound like a song. Right. What a wonderful world this would be. Right?
I love it. Yes.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Let me tell you something, girl. You brought it. I didn't know what all you were going to talk about, but these are some fabulous programs. Nicole Mosby Taylor, and you are with Empowering Minds of Maryland's Youth and EWBI Radio. For those of you listening, please make certain that you are following up and get your suitcases ready so that you can go buy some, get them ready, figure out where you can go and buy them and drop them off. I think this is a powerful, powerful program. And we need to send that program to several other people. I'm going to have an offline conversation with you after this.
Okay, awesome. But thank you so much, Marsha, for having us on today.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much.
This is really important. And you're welcome to come anytime.
Oh, thank you.
You always have a place here.
Awesome. And you always have a place on our mic. At Passion, Purpose, and Pumps.
Yes, ma'am. All right. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Nicole Mosby Taylor, Executive Director and Founder, Empowering Minds of Maryland's Youth, Emmy, and the Girls Mentoring Group, the powerful voices of young ladies. You know, too often we don't get to see programs like this that are in our face, that we can really hear what's going on and what has occurred in people's lives, because we're so busy doing so many other things. So thank you all for being with us and listening today. Our next guest, and he just can't stay away. I'm loving this. Every time I look around, I'm getting a call, and I'm just tickled. And it's Sean Lanier doing some incredible work with Resolve Solutions. He is the founder and the executive director, coming out of Alexandria, service disabled, veteran-owned and operated nonprofit that has helped over 500 plus students from 23 states to earn over $61 million in ROTC scholarships and Service Academy appointments toward their undergraduate degrees. And Sean Lanier was born in McDonald Army Hospital, Fort Eustis, Virginia, and raised in Petersburg, Virginia. After attaining the grade of E5 in the Virginia National Guard and upon graduation from the Virginia Military Institute with a Bachelor of Arts in History, Sean was commissioned a second lieutenant in the aviation branch. He earned a Master's of Science in Business, Supply Chain Management, and Logistics via the University of Kansas, Executive Masters in Nonprofit Administration, the University of Notre Dame, Mendoza School of Business. Expected completion is July 23rd. Corporate Learning Officer, it's an EDD, Corporate Learning Officer, University of Pennsylvania. Expected completion is 2026. He initially served as a UH-60AL flight platoon leader, HHC executive officer, with the platoon leader and flight company executive officer in the 152nd Aviation Regiment, Seoul, Korea. He is involved with the A5A fraternity, Virginia Military Institute, Board of Visitors, Petersburg Public Schools, Career and Technical Education Advisory Board, the president, Prince George's County Public Schools, Career and Technical Education, PAC Committee, Field Force Liaison, United States Military Academy at West Point, the Rocks Incorporated, National Board Volunteer, former VMI, Alumni Association Board of Directors of VMI AA, Potomac River and George C. Marshall Chapter Vice President, President Rotary International, Springfield, Virginia Chapter, the University of Kansas Alumni Association, and several other activities that help to create STEM and diversity outreach. Advocacy for higher ed and service to country through military to service. Welcome, 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 Mr. Sean Lanier. You know what? Did I read all that the last time? I just did. How do you find time to even run a business? You got all good goobly loobly. You got a lot going on.
Well, fortunately, a lot of those things are tied into each other, so they kind of overlap, and some things fade over time. So it's not as much as it sounds. So I'm
yes, it is. Yes, it is. It's a lot. It's a lot, and you doing it. You multitasking, I'm sure, right? On the phone and watching something on the laptop.
Yeah, it's something. It's always something. I just came back from VMI a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weekends ago, we had 3 kids that commissioned. From there, then the following week we had 2 other kids that graduated from Virginia State University and became commissioned officers, and have another young man from Longwood University. He'll be commissioning this Friday at University of Richmond. So it's the benefit of what I do is that I get to see the outcomes. And when it rains, it pours. But it's a good feeling though to see kids accomplishing their goals and moving on to the next level.
But let's speak to what Resolve Solutions does. How did you create it, and why is it important?
Well, I mean, essentially, I started off simply as a volunteer alumni recruiter, but I was very fortunate to achieve my childhood dream, and that was become an aviator. I'm a second generation aviator. But toward the end of my career, I started realizing that was my childhood dream, but I inherited from my grandmother, Miss Alice D. Lanier. Everyone used to call her Miss Peaches. I inherited the passion to help kids. So what I ended up doing is started as a volunteer alumni recruiter with VMI, helping improve the diversity there. But at the same time, I was working in the Pentagon, and I was fortunate enough to be around some leaders in the Army there, and started to get a bigger picture. And I realized that it was much more, VMI was a small component of our national security. And that's what I was looking at it there. I could actually see from a very strategic level what the impact was. And we always talk about, I think in every 5 or 7 years, there's always an article in the USA Today that comes out to talk about the lack of African-American 1-star generals. And, it takes, what people don't realize, it takes 18 to 24 years to create a general officer. Then it takes 4 to 5 years, for a kid to actually go through college, go through ROTC, or go through a service academy in order to become an officer before they start that 18 to 24 year journey. So you really have to plant those seeds, and it just happened to work out that once I started understanding the larger picture, and with my background in supply chain management, I worked in admissions at BMI before. I went to flight school for a short stint. So I was able to kind of put together a plan and just kind of built from there. And quite frankly, for me, it's about, this is about giving back. I mean, I come from a town where, I'm not recognized by Eshawn Lanier, all those things that you read off earlier. Really back home, they don't care about any of that. If you're not giving back to others, if you're not helping others or representing your family, then you're dealt with, and it sounds kind of old fashioned, but that's just how I was raised. And it's very hard to unlearn what you're doing. So at RSI, it's really about, legacy building, generational wealth creation for what we do. And, by giving back, and as I heard you talking to your guest earlier, what we're looking forward to is investing in some young leaders that want to be future officers, community leaders, leaders in the community, entrepreneurs, that they're going to go off and be more productive citizens in their society. We know that if we get up to full strength and execute that we're talking about doing, it has a chance to be generational transformative, and meaning that our goal is to get up to 500 kids per year, which is about $40 million in offers. But if we have something as low as a 70% success rate, that 5-year cohort that you have, they're going to earn a lifetime earned income of somewhere between 735 million to $1 billion. If you actually teach them how to use their VA certificate, which each veteran is authorized, is worth $1 million, if they use it correctly, that's about $2 trillion worth of generational wealth creation through home ownership. Plus, they have the GI Bill benefits where they can use a GI Bill to get an advanced degree, which raises to their total lifetime earned income, or pass that benefit off to their spouse, or save it for their kids. That reduces the overall debt also for a family, increases their lifetime earned income. And if we actually teach them how to give back to their respective alma maters for that cohort, that's about $14 to $30 million back to their respective alma mater. So for us, it's about generational wealth creation, legacy building, and being those leaders in the community, which people are expecting of us anyway.
And that's really far more important than we even realize, because we go through the matriculation, but we don't even understand what's available to our young people. I know that you've been taking some classes in South Bend, Indiana, out at Notre Dame, right? And so, but when you sit down and look at that, those people weren't coming to John Adams High School to talk to us about what this really looks like, what those opportunities are. We didn't see that back in the day. Of course, that was 100 years ago, but nevertheless, if people don't know what they don't know. So how do you get this information out to people with your program? Because it's a powerful program on so many different levels.
Well, when I first started off, it was much smaller than where we're at now. You really depended upon veterans that you serve with, fraternity brothers, a lot of members I knew in the Divine Nine, building relationships with local champions, as I call them, JRTC instructors, counselors, teachers. We go to college fairs and collecting a lot of cards. But what I found is that it's really important in our community, and you learn this as a kid growing up, that you have to listen and figure out what the concerns are. You have to meet people where they're at, because it's like, even when I was going out and representing VMI, it was no sense in talking about how great the biology department is and how 90% of the kids that apply to medical school get accepted there. If the kid wants to be an engineer, or if the kid wants to run their own business and become an entrepreneur. So if you listen, then you can have a much more effective conversation. But you also have to respect people. And I think one of the things that kind of chafed me a little bit was that a lot of times people put expectations on folks in our community. They make an assumption, or they try to lead you to a certain goal. Well, most of the kids that I talk to, they have goals, they have passions, they have dreams and things that they want to talk about. You just have to step back and listen, and then help give them a path on how to get there. And what we try to do at RSI is take that and challenge it a little bit more. You're going to hear, Takesha Farmer earlier, that when I met her talking about her daughter, she was not even thinking about her daughter going overseas and doing language immersion, and how that's going to help her with her application to go to law school. But that's my job, as with my background as a former officer and a strategic planner, to think about those things, and not just look at the kid for getting them into school, but look at where can they perform at the highest level possible, and just challenge them to meet that goal. Because a lot of times when I talk to kids, I say, hey, someone's got to be in charge. It might as well be you. Do you think you can do that? And it's rare that I see any of our kids that say, hey, I want to be a follower. They understand that being a follower is important to being a leader, but they're not content with just being a follower and working for someone. They want to go out here and be the one like Oprah writing checks.
Right. And that's real, though. And they see it as being real.
Yes. And you have to challenge them to do that. But a lot of times it's just getting them to understand the path understand, I mean, that there is a path. It's not one way to do it, but understanding you have to, every experience that you're going to have is going to build upon each other. You're going to learn to, sometimes you have to take, I didn't just become a pilot. I did work at Sears as a box boy. I did work at Kmart as a stock runner. I did work at McDonald's flipping burgers, all those things, and all those things did help me become a better officer because I found out very quickly what I did not want to do.
No question.
But I have a healthy respect for the people who put in an honest day's work, day in and day out. And I understood that that was not something that I wanted to do for 10, 15, 20 years.
Mm-hmm. Because that showed you what those boundaries were. I'm not crossing over here. This is the bigger picture. Seems more comfortable but if you don't know what you don't know, then you can't get to where you're trying to think you might want to go.
And I agree with you on that one. But the challenge is that for a lot of kids now, they have the ability, they just may not have the exposure. I was exposed very early as a child because my father was a Vietnam medical evacuation pilot. He flew Hueys in the Vietnam War. So I grew up aware that, about being a pilot. It wasn't about being a Black pilot. It was like just being a pilot. So I was exposed to that. But a lot of my peers where I grew up at, you had Fort Lee, which was a logistics base, but you also had, UPS, Walmart distribution, a tobacco plant. Those weren't STEM careers. Those weren't things that you're supposed to. Now, there were a lot of kids a lot smarter than me that went on to be doctors, but that's because they had an interest in doing something, and they weren't around people that told them what they can't do. So I think that the biggest challenge that we have now is like just getting kids exposure, especially based off of geography, because some things are not exposed. And like you stated earlier, you're right there in South Bend, right next to Notre Dame. So even though you're right there, going on that campus is a different planet. So sometimes a kid can be geographically aligned to where there's a lot of STEM opportunities, but there's no one in their family that works there. None of their friends' family work there. They're not getting that exposure. They're not being taken over there for the visits. Then they might as well be 10,000 miles away because it's the same difference. You don't see it with your own eyes, and it doesn't mean that you can't achieve it, but you're less likely to be interested in that area because you just haven't been exposed to it.
Because you don't even know what you don't know. So if nobody's coming home to bring you some information about it, there's nobody doing that. So you pass that. If you go all the way out Eddy Street, you come to that dead end, but you don't go straight. You just go to the right or you go to the left. You don't go straight ahead and get up on that campus. And it means all the difference in the world, even to just think that you could see yourself there. Many people don't even want to be there. They're so busy trying to get out of South Bend. We didn't even realize the jewel that we had while it was there, right?
Well, that's the interesting thing about it. You tell that story. I was actually recruited to the program. I went in. I saw something online because of a agreement that Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated had with Notre Dame because of a frat brother that works on the campus. So once I went in to the interview, listened to the program, they started recruiting pretty hard. But when I got on campus and started seeing what they were doing, they're making a lot of efforts to recruit more diverse folks on campus. As a matter of fact, we're hoping to do is have a partnership with Notre Dame in order to use some of the help open up opportunities for the kids that we have to go into some of the graduate programs there. They have 5 specialized master's programs within the School of Business, in addition to the MBA and EMBA program. So they're looking for a lot of kids, but particularly for HBCUs, to come there to get a master's in analytics. It aligns very well for us because 30 to 40% of our kids go into the National Guard or Reserve after they finish college and they commission, which means that they're looking for jobs immediately. But the timeline works out very well because they can graduate, they can do their training, which is basic officer leadership course. They can do that, and then they'll be within 1 to 2 years of graduating. So potentially we can have kids coming out from Hampton University to Florida A&M, do their training as an officer, get online with that, and then go to South Bend, Indiana, and get that Notre Dame and become a domer, part of that degree, and be tied into that network. And they're actually going into a community that's actually seeking them out. It's just helping connect those paths. And there's kids out there. I never grew up rooting for Notre Dame. From Notre Dame was the other side of the planet. The only thing you saw was on Saturday college football when they played USC, Michigan, or something like that. Or when you watch Rudy. So I never had that notion that a kid from Newport News in Petersburg, Virginia, would step foot on the campus in Notre Dame. Not that I didn't think I was good enough, but I had never seen it outside of TV. And I would tell you that I was a little bit in awe driving up on the campus when you actually got there. It took a week or two just to realize that, hey, I want to be here. Unfortunately, we had a sister named Dr. Angela Logan, who's the director of the program. And she reminded us, every day that we belong there. There wasn't an accident. It's not there to fill a quota. And, you hear it say, yeah, I get it, ma'am. I get it. But it actually sinks in. And then once you realize that you're here, but it takes on additional weight that you can, it's not just for me or how it can improve our side, but how can we open the door for others?
That's exactly right. And, I remember some of the first Black folks that were on that campus, and Steve Cuthbert comes to mind. He was out west, and he came to Notre Dame, and he and Ray, whatever his last name, they were engineers. And in the engineering program, 2 Black brothers came to South Bend, and they got involved in the community. But that was back in the early 60s, right? And so you sit down and you look at that, they had a lot of conversations with my dad about that, this is, we're here and we're seeing it. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy, but they broke that barrier getting in those doors. I'll always remember that. My dad made sure I did too.
Let's see who you have up here. Nate says Tim and Tonette Hayes, but Tim's father was my uncle Burton Hayes, who was an original Montfort Point Marine, which means one of the first African-American Marines. But you fast forward, if Uncle Burton, if you cut him, God bless his soul, he passed, but he would bleed blue and orange. He was a diehard, Virginia State supporter, advocate for HBCUs, and we understood that the strength and the power behind that. But to think about Tim going to Virginia State like his father, but to have 2 of his boys become Air Force officers, first son, mechanical engineering major that was selected for a pilot slot. But then the second son, Tanner, was going to be a military intelligence officer for the Air Force. So for me, that's what's really critical is like, how do you improve upon the generation? And even if I have to take it, take a bullet, not a bullet, but
no, we ain't taking that.
No. You know what I said? But I mean,
that's a military conversation, right?
What I meant to say, if you had to make those sacrifices for that next generation, that's what I was taught as a kid, to create opportunities for them, so then they can hopefully with their kids and extend that family legacy from there. So,
well, let's bring Tim and Tonette Hayes and their family. They are the parents of T. Scott Hayes, class of 2019, mechanical engineering, and Tanner Hayes, 2022, international studies. Tim and Tonette served on the Parents Council for 6 years, and in the 2019 class year served as co-presidents of the council. Scott is now a first lieutenant in the United States Air Force. Second Lieutenant Tanner Hayes has also been commissioned in the USAF Air Force and will begin active duty in the spring of 2023. Tim Hayes is the Vice President of Finance at Maryland Cooperative, Inc. Hello, how are you, Mr. Hayes? You unmute your mic. Yeah, there you go. How you doing?
I am doing just great.
I see you on the move.
Yeah, I'm out of town working this weekend, but I said, hey, let me make sure that I just have the capacity to jump on the call today.
I'm so glad you did. So talk to us about your relationship with Revolt. I mean, this is a big program. How did you get involved with them?
Well, Sean and I, we have this unique connection in that our great-grandmothers were sisters. So we have a big family tree. We all grew up in the Petersburg area. And so that's how we have our wonderful connection. We're family.
I love it. So, and I said Revolt, and that's not really the name of the company. So forgive me for saying the wrong name. It's Resolve Solutions. And you're so kind, Sean. You didn't even say anything. You just let me go on and say stuff that didn't even make no sense. So anyway, but now you have your boys involved in this program. Did they go through the program, and how does that work? How did you enter the program, and what was the expectation and the outcome?
Yeah, for us, it was Scott had a kind of a unique interface with VMI in that when he was in 10th grade, he went to a STEM conference, and it really kind of prompted him to think about what he wanted to do. And he just kind of continued through that process. And I think that the huge benefit that Resolve has helped, as with many students, is Sean's expertise and knowledge about VMI. VMI is incredibly family oriented. And when you have family in an environment and you understand the process, you have a greater likelihood of succeeding in that environment. And so I think that that's one of the huge opportunities that Resolve does, is that you can have a qualified kid, but if the child and especially the family does not understand the nature of what they are embarking upon, you won't achieve success. So I think that Resolve played a greater opportunity in helping us navigate VMI more so than our arrival.
Okay. And that's huge, though, that you have an organization that can step you through that process, other than trying to, I call it stumble bumming around, trying to figure out where those proper entrance points are, right?
Correct. And I think that one of the things that that Sean has done very well is creating an environment where when you have a question about how do I do the following, again, Resolve, and again, y'all have to forgive me because Sean is growing Resolve, but so much of our interface has been with Sean. So if I don't say Resolve, y'all have to forgive me. But like, hey, Sean, how do we do this? And we realize the conduit is Resolve, but often it is just having access to how do I pivot from point A to point B? How do we address this issue? I've seen Sean through Resolve give kids opportunities to evaluate what's the best way. Do I immediately come to VMI or do I enlist? What do I need to understand about what serves me best in my interface with using the military as an opportunity to grow and strategically develop and help me long-term in my career.
And I think that's a lot of parents go through, right? Where do you even begin? Where's the door? What door? Is it door number 1, door number 2? Because I see like 12 doors here. What am I supposed to do? And once I get to one door and it doesn't tell me who's going to help me navigate the other 5 that I just went through, that it didn't make any sense.
Right. No, and so I think that that's one of the things I really appreciate what Sean is trying to do with Resolve. He is a VMI grad, but it also shows the capacity to leverage opportunities at additional institutions. Like my dad, like Sean was mentioning, my dad, when you cut him, he bled orange and blue. And with Sean, you cut him, it bleeds some color of VMI, right? But I think the too is that there's so many opportunities that when you've not experienced, you don't know what to do. I had the good fortune that my brother commissioned in the Army years ago. And what I began to realize was the fact that we as a people, as a diverse group, we don't often understand what being an officer brings to the plate. And so that was one of the things that when my oldest got there, I was like, hey, man, why don't you talk to guys at VMI about if they had to do something differently, what would they do? And the vast majority of the guys came back and they said that they would commission, that they had to revisit their time. And I said, so what makes you think that 80% of the people are telling you that they wish they would have commissioned, that it is not at least worth an exploration opportunity? And he did it because he came to VMI with no intent of commissioning. I'm not going to commission. I'm not going to do it. And so now he's a first lieutenant in the Air Force. Our second son, who Sean had a really good bet with about how he wasn't going to come to VMI, Tanner all of a sudden said, Dad, hey, look, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I made my decision. I'm like, so where are you going? He was like, VMI. I was like, oh. I'm like, what's going on here? So he arrived and he took a different path in that he was awarded an ROTC scholarship by a branch. He arrived and found out that branch wasn't a good fit for him. And so he just then said, hey, I'm going to change branches, and then has commissioned in the Air Force. So
wow.
So it's been a really good, but I think it is the networking opportunity, the capacity to see your kids. And again, like my dad integrated the Marines. So, he died in 2018. So I just know he would be totally ecstatic to see both of his grandsons now officers in the Air Force. So, yep.
That's powerful. Because those are the things that you want the grandparents to be able to take pride in, because that takes them to a whole nother level, right?
Agreed.
Right? And it's that legacy that we have to continue to develop.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting, Sean, doing this program. I'm sure that you get a lot of feel-good stories, right? Of all of the things that people have gone through and their children have gone through just by simply telling somebody about a door that's closed in many cases, but giving them the wherewithal to be able to figure out how to open it and what to do once that door opens.
I think Tim hit the nail on the head. The beauty with working with Tim and Tonette, I actually knew about Scott earlier, early at the late his junior year, but also knew he was family. So it was like a little bit different thing, especially with family. We weren't really that close with him growing up. So a lot of times what I've learned, particularly in the military, you have to kind of watch for afar and just kind of be there when they need it. Mm-hmm. As you can listen to Tim and we meet Tonette, they're wonderful people, and they're very good at drawing out questions and letting kids make their own decisions. So there was already a certain independence that's required for officers that they had in them. So the guidance or anything that I interjected, the real trick with them is letting them come to their own determination, especially with Scott, because he was pretty headstrong already about what he wasn't going to do. So sometimes you had to kind of lead the target. They think they know, but you kind of had to kind of let them figure it out for themselves. And it kind of worked out. And what you also do is just drop little breadcrumbs here, talk about language immersion. It's just, when I said earlier about meeting people where they're at, you have to challenge kids at different levels. Mm-hmm. And there's both their kids were very high power in the sense that you have to challenge them a little bit more than just like, hey, you can't just, okay, this is going to pay for your school. That wasn't where they were at. I mean, they were wanting a little bit more from life. So you had to raise the challenges. So that forced me to go out here and find out what would be some opportunities for them that they would be capable of, that they can excel in and thrive, because both of them are going to, in their own way, we're going to be successful regardless. It's just trying to figure out how do we get them to take some steps that would benefit them in their life experiences, 10, 15 years from now. And like I tell a lot of my parents, I'm really not as interested in their 5 years in college. I'm more interested where they're going to be 7 to 10 years after they graduate. When you get ready to make that purchase for that first home or get ready to start a family, are you, putting money away, saving? Are you paying yourself? Are you able to pay for your bills and put something aside to take care of your family? Or you're parents in case they become ill, so you don't have that cycle. So those are different challenges. And, honestly, kids are not thinking about that stuff 18 to 22 years old, but that's where the relationship with the parents, having those discussions when the kids are not there, or asking questions that will lead them to think about that process on their own. Because again, I'm not a parent. I'm not making that decision. I'm not at the table with them. But how do you plant some seeds so when they have that family discussion, they discuss it at the family? Because at the end of the day, that child that's transitioning into adulthood, they're going to be the ones that are making that decision, and they have to look in the mirror and own it.
Okay. And, Timothy, I was just getting ready to say something to you, and you just disappeared. Okay. Well, you just the screen turned black. I just was I talking too much and not enough? Was it something I said, or what happened? I don't know. It just black.
My kids know I'm not incredibly tech savvy.
Yes, you are. So in looking at this program, could you have how did you get involved in it? Why did you think this was so important for your children?
Well, again, I think that the big piece is I try to always encourage my kids in the fact that we know what we know, but often what we don't know is what we just don't know, right? It's blind spots, right? And so I think that
sometimes you don't know what you don't know.
Right, and so, in that thought process, I think Resolve has been helpful, not only, in my ability to call Sean and ask him a question, but also kind of guiding other parents. And our experience at VMI was incredibly unusual in that, one of our sons was a battalion commander. One of our sons was his class vice president. And if history shows us for what it was, we think we were the first African-American Parents Council presidents ever at VMI.
I love it.
And that then created a different viewpoint and dynamic. And so often, whereas others have had these opportunities to say, oh, and I will use let me not use the exact VMI terminology because a lot of people might not understand it, but when your child arrives at VMI, they are a rat. Well, as a rat, you need a senior advisor. Well, most people don't really understand the impact of the senior advisor on your child's VMI experience. If you don't have a family that has been trained in that, or a Resolve that can ask you the question, so have you gotten your senior advisor? You can end up with just a horrific experience. So I think that that's been the ongoing piece that we've been able to experience, is just having access, not only to Sean, but then also as a parent, seeing the network and then kind of lifting some of the load off of Sean to say, hey, can we sit in and just have a conversation? If your kid is coming to VMI, or they're going to be involved in a military program, or, hey, here's our experience, here are the do's, here are the don'ts, here's the win, here's the won'ts. And to have success, you kind of move forward from there. And not that Resolve is limited only to people of color. We talk to any and everybody. And sometimes we've gotten pushback. Oh, y'all only care about certain groups. And in many instances, the answer is that's a wonderful thought. If you've got a dynamic, a storyline that you're trying to feed, which is a bunch of hogwash, but we try to help everybody, from that perspective. And so I think that's the real opportunity with Resolve is helping Sean, clone himself so that Resolve can kind of continue to grow. Because again, there's just a huge deficiency. My boys will tell me, oh yeah, I'm on active duty, or I went to camp, and I'm less than 0.5% of the people that are present that are officers. And we realize that often officer opportunities lead into senior level opportunities, because how do you manage hundreds of people at the age of 26? It just doesn't happen that way. So in that model, that's kind of what we got to do. And I hate to do this. I'm at a company event, and I wanted to make sure that I jumped on. But
and now you're gonna jump off.
Yeah, I do.
and go handle your business.
Yeah, I do need to jump off, but I'll give kind of a final piece of it. I think that again, not only and one of the things I want to kind of really stress to people is that may be listening to it, especially to the kids um, that have benefited from Resolve directly or indirectly. I think it's a huge opportunity again to take what they have learned and share what they've learned, because too often, as a diverse group, we kind of put our heads down and don't think always to kind of look up and how do I look back and help those
Right.
that kind of look like me. And so when we were at VMI, that's something that we would do. It's like, okay, hey, I'm in this parents event. I'm here to help everybody, but daggone it, who looks like me and who looks lost, and then how can I help them kind of get through that piece?
All right. Timothy Hayes, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming up.
Bro.
Look, I got only 15 minutes for 2 more people with Resolve.
I got to go.
Tim.
Thank you, Timothy. You all are welcome to come back anytime, because I know y'all got more to talk about. We're going to have to do another show.
Sounds great.
All right, baby.
All right,
Thank you so much. Good luck and safe travels here.
Thank you.
Okay. We're going to bring our next guest up, Takesha Farmer, who's a parent and the mother of Cadet Julian Cherry from Temple University. She is currently the manager quality systems for Stryker Spina Division. Her educational background is in chemistry and cell biology. She started her career as a bench scientist and has worked in a leadership capacity for the past 7 years and serves as the president of the board of directors for a nonprofit, Legacy Directors of Women, whose focus is on the needs of women and families. And she has a son, Justin Farmer, a retired Army veteran. And her interests are fitness, professional coaching, and travel outside of work and family life. Takesha, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your patience. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I see that you and your son have been involved, Cadet Julian Cherry. Let's talk about your relationship with Resolve.
Sure. So much like Mr. Hayes was saying, I met Sean, who is the face of Resolve, at a track meet. In fact, Julianne was competing and I was on the sideline cheering, probably uncontrollably. And so Sean stopped me and we just started a small conversation. And he and I both are quite the talkers, so we didn't need an introduction of any sort. We just started talking. At that point, he started to introduce us to VMI, as one can imagine. And he said something then that I think was very important. I think he just kind of touched on it a little bit ago. He said, I'm not interested in her next 4 years. I'm interested in her next 40. And for a mom like myself, who, have a title of being a momager or being very helicopter parent, or, very controlling for all the outcomes for Julianne, I thought, well, this is an interesting point, and I think it's something that I like to hear, because for me, obviously, my interest is not her 4 years, it's everything that happens after that. And so I think his sentiment aligned with where I was wanting her to go in life, and we just kind of blossomed from there.
Mm-hmm. And so when looking at this program and the way that it developed, is it what you were seeing? Is it what you thought it was? And how is your daughter functioning in this new direction?
It's more than what we could have ever planned for ourselves. So for me, I had always thought that sports would be her vehicle for college, and meeting Sean and being introduced to Resolve, we have a new trajectory, which still sports is built into it, but this is, dare I say, and better outcomes, right? So as an athlete, there's an end point, right? And in this particular relationship with not only Resolve, but all of the military service and opportunities that come throughout the rest of her career, there's no endpoint, there's no limit, there's no ceiling. And I think that in general, Resolve has put her in positions that she's able to network. She's had some really unique opportunities. Her freshman year was just so amazing. I mean, very jaw-dropping. I had an opportunity to attend a National Defense Summit. She had an opportunity to connect with some, retired generals and, people who have had long military careers. She was awarded the Claire, and Sean, correct me if I'm saying this wrong, Claire Bender Adams, I think that's what it is.
Claire Adams Ender.
There we go. Scholarship. She also was awarded a DC Rock scholarship. So there was.
That's
yeah, I
huge.
mean, she was. Yeah, I mean, she was being a part of Resolve has changed our lives tremendously, and I don't think of it in a way of just Julianne. I think of it in a space of it's generational change, because now for someone like myself who amassed a significant amount of student debt to go to school, Julianne doesn't have that right now, right? So she doesn't have any student loans. She's been able to have additional funding opportunities that allow her to get a little extra pocket change here and there. But more importantly, it allows me as a mom, especially a single mom, to not have to purge my savings or my retirement accounts to pay for her to go to school.
That's huge, Takesha. That is huge. And in looking at that and looking at your daughter and how she sees herself, what's her feedback to you with these new experiences?
It's something to think that for an opportunity that we just didn't see on the horizon, she really fell into the role very naturally. And again, I do believe that we said before, I think that her being a part of a sports, culture early on, I think that really helped transition her from one team to another. Sean has probably heard me say that before. It's a really good transition point, I believe. So it's not that she was not used to having leadership. It's not that she wasn't used to having supervision or having rank and file. I think that you see that in any level of sport. And I think that now transition that over into the Army ROTC. And she's also, I think, in the National Guard, I suppose. I think that's what it is. As part of her, what is that? The membership simultaneous. Yes,
she's part of a simultaneous membership program because she got a what's called a Minuteman scholarship, which means that she'll commission and go into the National Guard and Reserves once she graduates from there.
I love it.
So the rank and file is something I think she's very used to. I think that she appreciates that. I think she appreciates the discipline that comes with waking up, a few days a week and having. It's funny. I thought initially, I think her first week of school last year, I was calling like at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm like, "Are you up? Are you ready?" And she's
okay,
like,
Mama.
Yeah, like I was a little nervous, so I was kind of like, "What's going to happen here?"
Right.
But she fell right into it. And again, I think it was something that she was very used to doing. In high school, they had practices at 6 a.m. So it wasn't something that she was, was unfamiliar with her getting up early in the morning and starting her day and being in competition at whatever level early on. And then using that energy to help forge the rest of her day.
I love it.
Marcia, she said that, but she didn't had any idea about her daughter going overseas in the freshman year of college.
Oh, and how did you deal with that?
So we dealt with it probably So Julianne had an opportunity to spend the summer in Paris to study abroad. Duty. And I think that some other people on this call would have perhaps wanted her to go somewhere else. But I think the compromise was that we would take the first summer, a little light. And
there was no compromise. This was a family decision. I wanted her to go to China, but I did not have a vote. I was not part of the family.
That's right. She said, go sit down. That's what she said. Go sit down, Sean.
I thought to myself, well, I think we're gonna make an executive decision. I think that it's a phenomenal opportunity. Opportunity. I think that it's something that she should have done. I think it was the right timing for her to do. I think it was a great opportunity. I do think in the future that she should take advantage of other more strategic languages and more strategic placements. But I think in general, having, that space between your freshman and sophomore year, you don't have really, much going on anyway. You really can't get a job. You can't get a job that's worth any real value.
Right.
You don't really qualify for any qualified internships, anything that again will be of any significant value. So the next best step to me was to go to do some study abroad. And I mean, even though more of a love language and not a strategic language, I think it was still a great experience for her.
Oh, but she could still take French and take it anywhere in the world.
Well, I think we're done now with French. I think that was the last hurrah for French. Yeah, so,
she said, done.
We're done. Yeah, we're done with French now. But it was a great opportunity for her, right? She got to be away from to do something different, and then more importantly, what we hear now, feedback from I had a couple of parents call during the summer and say, well, how did Julianne get to do this? We had another parent, a young lady who's actually also Army ROTC. Her mother said, why didn't you do this? Asking her daughter the same thing. And so, I think they're planning for a similar step next summer. And I think that being a leader is often things unseen. Like, I mean, it's when I say unspoken, it's like that you're not actually telling someone what to do. You're just going ahead and doing what you do. And other people are going to see that. And then they're going to think, well, maybe I should be doing the same thing.
That's
like we had other students come to us last year asking, Julianne, about the other scholarship opportunities that they had, because maybe they only knew about one element, but this is where RSI comes into play, because they, Sean and company gives us the heads up on here are some opportunities that are out there. Now, they're not given to you. You have to apply for them. Their essays.
But sometimes you don't know that they even exist. If
you
somebody
don't even know that
you don't know what you don't know.
You don't know what you don't know. Exactly.
Right.
And so when you have an organization like RSI that keeps you informed, that calls your name in rooms that you're not in, that is, to me, that's important, right? And I think that's the thing that separates RSI students from other students.
Okay. Takesha Farmer, thank you for sharing and weighing in on this. And I hope that the listeners and their families are listening, because these parents have already gone through the process. So maybe this is a roundtable for another day that we need to participate. But thank you so much, Keisha.
Thank you so much.
We have Dee Dee Jones and Horton and Son. Dee Dee Jones Horton is a native of Greenwood, South Carolina. She earned a Bachelor's of Arts degree in Professional English, cum laude, from South Carolina State University in 1990, where she also reigned as Miss South Carolina State University, 89 through 90. And she served in the United States Army as a quartermaster officer until 1993. Earned a Master's of Science degree, magna cum laude, in organizational development and organizational behavior, from the University of Hartford in Hartford, Connecticut in 1998. She's been an entrepreneur for the past 17 years and a 34-year member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and a devout mother of two children, Taylor and Aaron Horton, and grandmother to Roman. Her favorite scripture is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Yes, Lord. You're going to preach up in here. Dee Dee Horton. How do we get her up? Hey, Dee Dee.
Hello. How you doing?
I'm great. How you doing?
Good. Hi, Sean.
Hey, Dee Dee.
And I see you have this incredible son. So how have you been involved with RSI?
We've had great beginning with Sean. His best friend went to school with Aaron's dad's best friend. So we got connected after Aaron decided, after months and months of traveling, he wanted to go to VMI. He said, Mom, I need to be here. And we had no idea how that was going to happen, living in Georgia and being away in Virginia. But within, I think, 24 hours.
Wow.
Right. A call was made to him, and the rest is history.
And so with that experience, was it everything that you expected, or was there were nuances that you hadn't thought of, or how did you make that transition so well? Because I see you smiling about it. So something good must have been going on. Huh?
Well, I'm kind of like, Miss Tanisha, I'm the helicopter mom, very involved. I was, PTA president at my son's school as a high schooler. I said, Mom, you're always here. But Sean has taught me how to let go. So that was one of the nuances really for me. I think I've got more out of working with the program than my son, because there are so many things that, he had to do on his own to prepare for this opportunity. And he's a rat. He's been there. He went July 5th for second session of summer school. He's also playing football. So, I've had to learn a lot about myself. But yeah, that's pretty much, I would say that's been probably the greatest hurdle. But Aaron just kind of fell in line. I remember going to the parent weekend, and Sean was like, "Have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done that?" He was like, "No, sir. No, sir. Yes, sir." And so he was on it. He was on
I
it.
love it. But also he was on it because it was a good experience for him. Right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
And so that's what's so important. I don't know there we are. So that's what's so important, that he found his way within that organization, which seemed to have been easy, right?
I think for Aaron, it was at the time he was working on his Eagle Scout project. He knew what he needed to do, and Sean was very adamant about, these are the things you need to do to make sure that you get accepted. We went from I want to go here to being recruited. Now we had to go through the process of actually doing the application. So I would say it was easy for that, and I think it was helpful to Aaron to have someone that looked like him to say what you need to do. It wasn't mama, yak, nagging. It was someone that he could look up to and to respect. And I really appreciated that. I thank God for planting Sean in our lives.
What are 3 things that you would tell parents today from your experience that you've already had with Resolve?
I would tell parents to trust the process. When Sean asks you to do something, just do it. You don't have to question it, just do it. 2, be very efficient in terms of your response. Don't let your child just think that they're doing it on their own, of course, but just be prompt. I think Sean put a fire under me, making sure we got things done. Trust the process, be prompt, and to enjoy the process as well. I think sometimes we're so uptight about what's going to happen, but when you're able to exercise your faith, because there's so much you don't know, you can't control. I mean, it's really a hands-off process that allows you to enjoy it. So now I look back thinking, okay, we got through that. So it's like almost another weekend. We're here now, right? And that's Aaron's philosophy too. He's like, Mom, 4 for 40. His mindset is, I didn't come to school. He probably won't play it, pro ball. He went there knowing, after talking to Sean, seeing Sean, observing him, seeing the people he introduced him to, that when I graduate, I won't have to look for a job. And to that effect too, I want to make sure I make this very clear. When we talked about funding, Sean was very upfront about the cost and everything. And see, had we been in Georgia with Aaron Scott with his academic abilities and SAT, he would have gone to school at no charge, basically. But going to Virginia, we have out of state, and we got right on the ROTC. Sean got us right on the ROTC path immediately, and now we're in line for a 3.5-year scholarship. Which will pay for everything starting his second semester of freshman year. So we're so blessed.
That is wonderful. And it's really, I think these testimonies are really important to have, because people, it's the unknown. And there are so many elements to this program. It's hard to find a program that has so many different dimensions. Right? And
Absolutely.
How you insert yourself and get yourself involved in all these different things and opportunities that you now can sit, and they're right in your face. It's not something you see on TV or you read and somebody's sending you something. You're immersed into this program and getting an understanding from so many different levels of people.
Absolutely. And I remember we met with Sean in January. Met him at a track. Well, we went to meet him at the track meet there on campus. He said, y'all got to come back for for the open house weekend, So here we go. 2 weeks later, we're back on the road, getting out of school early. Again, just doing what he's asked us to do. And it has definitely paid off.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you coming. And moreover, that you are part of this program. I sit down and Dee Dee, I've known Sean for a while, but just since I've had this show, Sean has shown me everything there is to know about. I got more Sean stuff on. You think this was his own station. Every time I look around, he got 12,000 people coming on, got it saying and giving it testimony. And it's a wonderful thing, because we don't always see this. We can't always see this. And so now you all can take these links for the YouTube channel, take these links and share them with other families who, I've got a 14-year-old grandson that in time, we gonna be down there too, looking at all these different girls. Well, I already know this. I see it. We see it in action, and that's what's so critical. And for me, it's important for people to be able to see what's available to them, because we don't know what we don't know.
Exactly, and that's been a theme. Now, I want to add this, my last point. With resolve, you will get results.
Right.
If you're not ready to do the work and to plant that seed, for that harvest, then don't even waste your time.
Well, listen, I got 3-4 more years for Peyton. So yeah, we will be revisiting all this conversation. Trust me. Absolutely. And so we really appreciate you coming on, and congratulations. And we wish you and your family continued success.
Thank you for having me. It's been such a blessing. And thank you so much, Sean. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Miss Dee Dee.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so
All
much,
right.
Dee
Dee. Sean Lanier, thank you so much, sir. We really appreciate you. And I know that I'm going to have some feedback and some stuff we're going to do later. I know you're not finished with me yet. So thank you very much. It's a powerful program, man. It's a powerful program. It's a powerful program. And the testimonies from these families are huge. It's huge. Okay. So let me know what else.
Thank you for having me. And just one last thing. No, I will. And just I think the last point I will put on it is that all of the families are interconnected. In a lot of ways, it's not. We're all with one family. That's one thing I learned from my grandmother and my family, is that you have to take care of each other. Whether they're not your family, they are your family. And it kind of success begets success. So it's a blessing just to be able to meet these people and help them extend their family legacies as well.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate you. And we will be talking soon, catching up.
All right. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. All right, sir. Take care. Bye-bye. Oh, we've had a full house. I'm telling you, this is really wonderful. We have Dr. Alex Alvarado, a psychologist, clinical psychologist, founder of Thriving Center of Psychology. And the areas of expertise are psychology, mental health, anxiety, depression, executive coaching, peak performance, fears, phobia, ADHD, OCD, PTSD, trauma, and stress. And he's a licensed clinical psychologist and the founder and executive director of the Thriving Center of Psychology, a mental health platform that exclusively matches people to qualified psychologists and therapists who use evidence-based treatments as defined by the American Psychology Association. His motivation behind launching the platform in 2019 was to help people find mental health care that they could trust, to provide quality therapy backed by the most up-to-date science. And since starting the Thriving Center of Psychology online platform, Alvarado and his senior psychologists have interviewed and vetted hundreds of therapists in California, Florida, Illinois, Minnesota, New Jersey, New York, and Oregon, who have gone on to help thousands of clients. As a result, they are one of the top Google-reviewed mental health practices in the country. He earned his doctorate of psychology in clinical psychology in 2016 and completed a private practice residency in New York. He believes that a person's first therapy experience is critical to fighting public stigmas in mental health, and that matching qualified professionals with individuals and their specific needs is a key step towards improving overall quality of life. Please help me welcome Dr. Alexander Alvarado. Hello, Doc. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for that intro. I loved it. How are you?
Thank you for your patience. I am great. And, I saw this when they sent the package to me. I said psychology, Lord, and I hope he's not going to sit and determine what I'm going. Anyway, so we're not going to do that today. But I'd like to talk to you about where we are in this nation with all of the changes and the nuances from being at home, sequestered during COVID, to jobs and losing companies, going out of business. There's so many different schools are closing. People aren't getting their kids to schools. What is going on, and how are people dealing with all of these issues?
Yeah, it's a lot. And, now more than ever, I think people are dealing with a lot, either environmentally, in, social issues, financial issues. Of course, we just, had COVID, the past few years. So it's been a lot for people to deal with, I think now more than ever.
So, well, with this trying to deal with it, what should people be doing? I mean, you have now people who are in households where there may be problems of folks being dealing with programs with people who are abusive. I'm trying to find the right word. That they have abusers in their household, and they have to deal with that. Or they've lost their job, they're about to lose their home. How should people be functioning that are sequestered the way that they are, or their jobs are being compromised? What kind of information should we be giving them? How can we, without you giving a determined, a factor, here's the resolve for that, but are there several things that you could share with us that people might consider, or how many people are afraid to even deal with the mental health issue? They run from having a mental health issue. They don't want to say they have mental health issues. How do you do? That's a big package that you need to unpack for us, please.
Yeah, and I think that avoidance of their mental health issue is very powerful in the short term, but the long term, it ends up causing more harm. And I think the biggest thing that people need to do is, basically talk to people and find out that they're not alone. The more that we are individualized and don't mention any of the issues that we have, the more lonely it feels, and the more people think that I'm the only person with this issue. But I think the more that we talk about these issues, the more people realize, hey, I'm not alone, and there's other people going through the same, similar or the same exact thing.
Mm-hmm. So when we talk about the processes, what are some of the processes? I see you do some vetting. What does that mean?
Yes, of course. So I think at the bare minimum, what we try to do before we even match any type of client to a therapist is make sure that therapist is a qualified clinician, meaning background, making sure that they have quality experience and an APA trained program. Making sure that they are actually specializing in the things that they specialize in. Being a licensed clinical psychologist, I can ask a lot of questions that maybe layman's might not, right? I can ask, how would you treat certain, types of diagnoses, and know the answers to these questions. So, making sure that they actually do know how to perform psychological treatments, but on the other side of things, making sure that they're personable and, have good bedside manner and are patient and will listen, and that people will feel comfortable speaking to them, which is a huge piece.
Mm-hmm. Now, so in the matchmaker, you do a 5-minute questionnaire. What is that designed to do?
Great question. Yeah. So our matchmaker, it's about, I think, 7 or 8 questions, and it basically helps people find out who they feel more comfortable speaking with, which will help us match them with the appropriate fit. Of course, the first question is why you're coming in. So making sure that we're matching with a provider with specialties that match, the reasons that you want to be helped. Other than that, maybe you feel more comfortable speaking with a male or female, someone with similar background or culture, maybe someone with in the LGBTQ community. Even as far as going to find out, does this therapist have a certain therapeutic style that might match more with me? For instance, are they more goal oriented, right? Am I coming in for maybe something that I want to accomplish, like maybe public speaking? I have a wedding and I want to kind of be able to accomplish this goal. Maybe a therapist that is more reflective. So I just want to talk and kind of talk about my problems and have a therapist reflect a lot of these things back to me. And then the last one of the last questions we have is, would you prefer a holistic therapist? And holistic therapist might be a therapist that recommends things like meditation or mindfulness meditation. So, and these are not mutually exclusive. A lot of therapists do a little bit of each. So, taking in all of these questions, we try to appropriately match every client that comes in with an appropriate fit, because that rapport, that fit with a therapist, is such an important and integral part of therapy. And to really hone in on that, after we match a lot of our clients, we allow them to have a free 15-minute consultation with any of their matches, just to kind of really feel confident in who they're investing in.
So this is 2022, right? And you're now doing online video therapy. What does that entail?
Sure, yeah, it's very similar to face-to-face therapy. In fact, research says it's just as effective, and we've seen it's just as effective as going in person. Sometimes it's a preference; people want to be in person or on video, but it's just like we're doing right now on a computer screen, looking through a camera and providing therapy digitally.
So, what does that look like? Are people being open to have this kind of conversation? So you can be anywhere in the world watching and having a conversation, one-on-one conversation with you, I guess, as though we were still in that little tiny cubicle.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and you could be anywhere. You could be at work, in a private office somewhere. It's really provided a lot of access to people who might not have been able to receive therapy at all before. Even people in rural areas where there's not too many therapists in their area, now they have access to a whole plethora of therapists.
So when you talk about mistakes about people making, not knowing, what are some of the problems that, I guess, what do you call them? Big, giant hurdles to get to making a decision to say, I actually want to talk to somebody, and I don't know that I really want to have everybody knowing my business. Right. And so they sit in some of that pain because they don't want to always share. How do you navigate that?
It's a great question, and it's almost how to overcome that stigma of therapy. And for a lot of people, it could come with a certain life instance, maybe something major that happened in their life that was almost a tipping point for them to go into therapy. Sometimes it's more of a progression, something they realize over time that, hey, something's not going well, and maybe I could use a little bit of help to get me through something, or I don't really have the tools to get through something. Some other people, they're all about self-betterment as well. We have a lot of people who they're fully functioning, and high performing people, but they always want to improve in other areas. They're almost at baseline, but they want to exceed baseline for peak performance. So there's a whole different amount, a lot of reasons that people come in, and getting over that hump, it can be difficult. And I think as a whole, it can be difficult, but we're seeing
the difficulty is just even picking up the daggone telephone to even talk to somebody to get an appointment. So that's huge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, of course. And we have a lot of people too that, they'll provide their email and their number, and we call and they say, no, please, I just want to communicate over email. So it's very true. There's these little nuances, but the smallest things can be the largest barriers to getting people into therapy.
So when you, what are some of the do's and don'ts on how to conduct an interview with a potential psychologist?
Yeah, great question. And like you said, interview with a psychologist, I recommend that fully before investing in a psychologist. So like we said, after we match psychologists with a client, we allow them that 15-minute consult, which is a really, really integral part of this process, because it helps the client feel comfortable that, that this is who is best for me. And a few things you might want to ask that therapist is, what specialties are you trained in, right? And so you want to make sure that the specialties that therapist utilizes or is trained in or has experience in matches what you're coming in for.
Wait, stop right there. Hold on. What specialties? How do you even know what specialties there are, right?
Yes.
What are the specialties?
Sure. Well, I mean, do they treat? Well, I guess what I mean, the better way to say it is, do they treat things that are the things that you're coming in for, right? So if I have anxiety, I better make sure that this therapist understands anxiety and has experience treating anxiety. If it's fear of flying, I better make sure, I want this therapist to have experience, and I want him to specialize in fear of flying. So it really starts with kind of, that question is really almost an interview with yourself, finding out, hey, what do I want to accomplish from therapy? What does successful therapy look like? And I want my therapist to have the experience of treating someone who's been able to overcome this.
And that's huge. Just to even identify what it is that you think you know, to get to the place where you can even ask the question.
Definitely. Yeah, no, it starts with you for sure. That's definitely the first part of it.
Mm-hmm.
So after you've figured out the specialties match what you're hoping to achieve in session, another great question is, and this is a difficult one sometimes, is does this therapist utilize evidence-based treatments? And why it's difficult.
Wait. What's evidence-based treatment?
And that's why it's so difficult. But basically that's all it really means is this therapist using therapies that are backed by science, right? I know it's surprising, like there's therapists out there that utilize, modalities that are not backed by science, but there's really a range, psychology's been around for the longest time, and there's things that have been more studied or less studied than others. And to really, I guess, minimize the chances of unsuccessful treatment, I like to make sure that the therapies that therapist is using is backed by science. So I don't expect normal people to just be able to know this and know that what therapies are backed by science, but I can give you 3 of the top ones that we like to see. Cognitive behavioral therapy, also known as CBT, ACT, also known as acceptance and commitment therapy, and DBT, also known as dialectical behavioral therapy. Now, there are a wide range that the American Psychological Association has stated that they're evidence-based, but what I would always do is just Google. So if you ask the therapist, what modalities do you use, what type of therapies do you use, write them down, Google them, and if you see something that comes up and it says pseudoscience, that might be a red flag. So just do your research when you ask that question.
And I think one of the things that really a lot of people that we see sometimes there's some issues, right? How do you even pose those questions to your loved ones or your friends to get them to even acknowledge that there is something that needs to be addressed?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and a lot of people, it's hard for them to hear, and they can be defensive. So I think it is important to be able to delicately go about that conversation. And I think it's hard to it's hard to provide someone help that they don't want in a lot of ways as well. Similarly in session, what they say, if a client comes in, you can't try harder than the client, even though sometimes we want to. So sometimes there's just the wrong time. People aren't ready for therapy when they ask for help. I think it's always important to be that person that is there and recommend them into therapy.
I think sometimes people are just so afraid that they don't even want, and they suffer in silence, right? And we've noticed in several cities across America, and I don't know about the world, but there are also a lot of suicides that are going on, that, untreated mental health issues. How do you even begin in a household where people are having to be in place because of the COVID, or businesses are shut down or whatever? How do you break through that exterior to get to the core of what your family might be feeling or going through?
I think a great route to go about it is being vulnerable yourself. So, maybe if you're a parent in a family, being able to show that it's okay to show emotion. So being able to almost model a lot of these behaviors could be very valuable to a family. Saying it's okay and you're not the only one, and normalize feelings, certain types of feelings.
So when is the best time to start therapy, and who should see a psychologist?
Yesterday is probably the best time for most people, but My favorite rule of thumb is if you've been thinking about seeking a therapist, it's probably time to see a therapist. But in all honesty, and I know it's a very cliche answer, anyone can benefit from seeing a therapist. You know, all of our friends and family are very, very helpful in providing us feedback, but they're all biased, you know, whether they know it or not, just because they know us in certain contexts. And we're the most biased to ourselves. So getting at the very base, an outside perspective of your life and, you know, the things that you're doing in your life is very, very valuable.
That's huge too. And so what are some of the mistakes that people make in when seeking therapeutic assistance?
Very, very good question. The number one thing that I usually see is that they go with the people when they search for a therapist, they just go with the most convenient option. And a lot of times the most convenient option is just the number one hit on Google. Well, just because someone's the best marketed therapist might not mean the best therapist for you particularly.
Right.
You know, another one is a lot of times people like to go through you know, referrals, whether it's a referral through their family member or friend. And same thing, right? Just because they're the best for your friend or family member doesn't mean they're the best for you. They could have been seeing their friend or family member for a totally different reason that when you would be seen for. And the reasons that they feel they're good for them might be totally different reasons, you know, why they would be good for you. So I think they're both really good starting points, but you need to do some more research before just conveniently taking the most convenient option.
And sometimes it doesn't have anything to do with you. It has to do with what you're looking for versus what somebody else is doing, because it may not be that fit for you, right?
Exactly right.
So what are some of the mistakes four things that you should know about the psychologist before you start paying for sessions? Do you get to go in and just ask for a free consult, or what happens?
Yeah, and a few of them we've mentioned. So first and foremost, does this person specialize in what I want help for? You know, another thing to ask would be, what do sessions look like with this therapist, right? If I'm coming in for anxiety, what do sessions tend to look like with you? What can I expect, right? Most therapists, especially if they usually know what they're doing and they've treated people similarly to you, they'll be able to say basically in an elevator pitch, well, first we'll start with your thoughts and then we'll go with behavior. They'll be able to kind of lay out, this is what we're going to be focusing on. The next one would be evidence-based treatments. So making sure that they're using science-backed treatments. And then the last, but definitely not least, and probably most important one, is how comfortable do I feel speaking to this therapist? Which is very important. Yes, that the rapport between a potential client and a therapist is, I think the last report I saw was 70% the reason for successful therapy. So that connection between a therapist and a potential client is huge.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes you don't even realize that you're sitting there and there's discomfort. So even whether you're in front of a therapist or in front of your boss or something, you can tell when your body is feeling uncomfortable, or whatever words are coming to you are not comfortable for you. And so you have to also look at that when you're sitting in a one-on-one with the therapist and remember those feelings, because if they're negative, then you need to address those when you're in there. Or is that too much?
Well, I think you definitely need to take note of how you're feeling, making sure that you're feeling heard, right? You're telling this person why what you want to accomplish in session. Do you feel like this person's listening? Do you feel like this is someone you'd be comfortable speaking with? So I think it's very important to think about how you're feeling as you're having this conversation.
Also sounds like it's something where you need to take some notes and think about them when you get home, right? Before you go further to make that decision. Do you have to make the decision right then and there, or can you just come in for a consult and just determine whether or not this is a comfortable or a fit or not?
Exactly. Yeah. No, there's no pressure, that says you need to decide this right now. It is definitely something, and that's why these are best done over the phone or via video. So that way, you don't have to go anywhere, and you get an idea of who this therapist is just from not even leaving your home. But I would always recommend too, having at least 2 or 3 of these conversations. Don't just put all your eggs in one basket. It's good to be able to compare different therapists and their styles and see which one best works for you. However, I wouldn't do too many. I wouldn't have too many of these conversations because what they call analysis or paralysis of analysis, right?
Right. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. They have too many and you can't figure out which one's which. So I would say 2 or 3 is really where I would look to see.
So I understand that you have a matchmaking quiz in your company. How does that work?
Yeah, so if you go our website at thrivingcenterofpsych.com, we do have about a 5 to 7 minute quiz that basically takes in all this information and helps us basically match our potential therapy seekers to the appropriate provider. So all the questions that we mentioned before, the specialties, the background, the type of therapeutic modalities they use, how maybe being a goal-oriented therapist or a reflective therapist. So all of these questions help our staff coordinate and place our potential clients with the appropriate fit. We like to call it a white glove experience. So they end up, they'll call people and they will go over one by one why this person is the perfect fit for them, and then allow them to speak to them for free.
Oh, that's great. So now how important is that first therapy experience in your overall impression of therapy? So first of all, do you have some preconceived notions about therapy?
I think everyone probably does, whether they know it or not. But that first session is very important. I think that's probably one of our motivating factors to do what we do and make sure that this fit is so appropriate. Because if people have a poor experience, and what that really tells me is they weren't matched appropriately. They might not have found the right therapist for them. And the problem with that is that I've heard so many times, from friends, family members, or clients that before that I've had I've tried therapy and it just didn't work for me. And so what that means is that they've tried therapy. The therapist might not have been a best fit for them, and so they've generalized all of therapy with that one experience with that particular therapist. So I believe it's very detrimental to the overall stigma of therapy if we don't get that appropriate fit right the first time.
And you walk away probably feeling even worse than what you felt when you first went in there, because it was a negative experience, right?
Oh, very much so. Yeah. And some people even feel more helpless. If this didn't help me, nothing's going to help me.
So they need to be very intentional with that experience. And so how important is the first session to the overall impression? And what are you doing to help people navigate that experience?
Yeah. And it's just like we mentioned, it's extremely important. I would say, it just is the overall impression of therapy. Like I said, people have a poor experience coming in, they're going to generalize that experience to all of therapy. So that's why we put all this emphasis on matching and also this 15-minute consultation, so people can find out, that's like the last line of defense. Like, we do a very, very good job of matching people with the appropriate therapist. But even after that, we want them to speak to that person and make sure that, really solidify that match before that first session.
And so when we're looking at moving forward in COVID, are you doing anything similar to what we're doing today, where people with workshops or things with organizations or with young people? Are you seeing a lot of young people having this experience more so than ever before?
Well, we're definitely seeing more young people coming into therapy, I would say. I think more people in general just have access to therapy. And I think the stigma, at least the locations that we're currently in, a lot of these metropolitan cities specifically, the stigma looks like it's been going down. I think, you know, I'm currently in New York City right now, and it's almost like common dinner talk. You know, people talk about how their therapist or who their therapist is, or they've gone to therapy, which I would say 10 years ago, you know, you would never see or hear that.
Right, right. And so how do people, once you get into this process and you get the names, now you can even go online, you can have a one-on-one. Is there like a list of questions that you provide before people come in, or you leave it to the patient to come in with whatever questions they may have?
Oh, in terms of the first session or before the first session?
Before the first session to get to the first session.
Sure. So a lot of the first session is more of the goals of the client, the potential client, of what they would like to accomplish in therapy. So some of these questions would be almost, you know, what would successful therapy look like for them? So, you know, really what the first session essentially would be is hearing about, you know, their potential goals in therapy, and really creating that collaborative process between the therapist and the client to come up with the actual goals of therapy.
So in looking at those goals, do you have, probably because you've been in this business for so long, when somebody first comes in, do you give them like a questionnaire to fill out? You know, you have a form to fill out about your typical health. Do you have that same kind of form to give to people about your mental health or what they may or may not be experiencing? And can you share some of those concepts?
Yeah, and so a lot of them would look very similar to, you know, your medical intake forms, and some of them do overlap because those could actually play a factor into their mental health. So all of those things in terms of their medical history, as well as their psychological history, are important. You know, we tend to have our intake forms ask about, you know, their education. You know, are they in a relationship, married, children, about their family life. A little bit of background on them, and of course, you know, so a little bit of the past, and then also a little bit about the present, and then a little bit about what they would like to accomplish, and how long that's been, and if they have something that's been going wrong, how long it's been going on for.
So when you say what's going on, are there symptoms that people have that you could share, just some sort of symptoms? So are you having problems of fear all of a sudden? Are you experiencing something because you're now single? Or are there things that are related to them personally that they can assume and take it on and look at themselves? Or how do those questionnaires, are they more clinical or emotional or predictable?
So it depends on which questionnaires. There are tons that we hand out. There are also some scales as well, like for you, like what you mentioned in terms of anxiety scales. So, you know, yes, just like that. You know, there are certain fears that you're experiencing. Some might just ask about sleep. Some might ask about your eating habits, or if you're feeling depressed or crying spells, or how many days a week this has been happening. So there's a lot of different questions that we tend to ask. But I think if you're someone who's thinking about, you know, hey, is there an issue that I should go in and see someone for specifically? A lot of times what we look for is how much is this really interfering with their daily life? You know, and how much so.
And so in looking at their daily life, where now companies are downsizing, so now you're doing the job of 3. Or you've been laid off because they can no longer afford the rent in New York at the level that they used to, because now its cost is higher than what your company is making, because the productivity is down due to COVID, right? So you've got all of these they're typical, but not so typical, because the world has totally changed. You know, people are downsizing, where they had a huge office building in Baltimore, as an example. They lost so many businesses in a couple of the main, like 20-story office buildings that have now been totally converted to condos and apartments. So if you're looking at probably 20 or 30 businesses, they're now either moving to the county or they've gone out of business. How do you function, or what kind of questions do you even talk about, because you're now in shock, right? Because your whole life is upside down. And how do I identify somebody who I can't even identify with everything because I'm feeling something I'd never felt before?
Yeah. So I mean, I think a lot of these things, one thing you can really think about is it interfering with other parts of my life that it didn't used to? For instance, if, you're talking about something that happened at your work and now you can't even focus when you're hanging out with your family. Your mind isn't present and it's causing or maybe it's causing issues in your relationships. So I think those are big warning signs. Usually if you see something, I mean, my work might have always been stressful, but now I'm getting a divorce, or now, my relationship with my kids, is strained, or I've lost a lot of friends, so I think these are things to definitely look out for.
In your practice, and what made you decide to go into this particular part of medicine?
Sure. So, my mother was actually in this line of work. She was a social worker, which was always awesome to see. We lived in a very small town, so we would usually go out. It didn't matter where we were. Someone would see her, spot her, one of her clients, and pull her aside. And we would know not to ask, because she would tell us, if anyone pulls me aside, don't ask. But we would always be with the family when she was, catching up with a potential client, and the family would always be thanking her. And I thought that was amazing. I think that led me down this psychology path. And after that, I really just figured, hey, psychology is going to be in anything that I probably want to do, right? Psychology, because it is in everything. It's in marketing, it's in business, it's in people, peer relations, it's in all the above. So I knew that was a pretty safe bet.
But in looking, and now you've been in this business how long?
Oh man. It hasn't been that crazy long, actually. I want to say 2016 is when I started really branching out. Yeah.
So, and in this, what are 3 things that and I keep going back to the pandemic because it's impacting every level of industry and homes and education. I mean, it's just the weirdest thing in just the conversations I've had with people. But in looking at how we move forward and trying to find that peace, one, we should probably set up an appointment so that we can meet you and have you deal with all of our problems. But also, then what are those questions that really are going to be impactful given the surroundings? Too often we don't want to always, it's hard to share. It's hard to tell people exactly what I'm feeling, right? So how do we get to a place where we're able to actually share what we're feeling, what we're experiencing? Because this wasn't happening a long time ago. Right? But the world created this nuance that we're having now. We're looking at all of the companies going out of business, this is all new, and it just happened within the last year and a half, right? The whole world has just turned upside down. So how do we start to get a hold of ourselves, right? To even be present enough to try to come and set up an appointment with you.
I think you kind of hit it right on the nail at the end there. How to be present enough. And I think it really starts with the awareness. You need to be aware of what's going on, how you're feeling, the physical sensations in your body or emotions that you're having. So it starts with that awareness and being able to understand, hey, I'm experiencing this, and maybe I need to talk to somebody about it.
So in doing that, tell us, But obviously you don't have to leave a name, but share with us an experience that you may have had with a neighbor or a friend or a client that made you sit back and have to look at your industry and how you're moving forward based on what we are seeing in the world.
Well, I tell you what, I haven't had I probably had this past year more friends and family members that have reached out to me specifically and asked them to, be matched with or find a therapist for them, which is nice that they think of me that way. And I think I really get a lot of, I really love being able to do that for people. But it kind of might, I guess one way to think about it, is maybe I'm more well known now, but other way to think about it is, maybe there's a lot more stuff going on in the world that, are driving people to therapy.
Mm-hmm. I know when I was growing up, and you can see all this gray hair, but back in South Bend, Indiana, people didn't really talk about seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and it just was taboo. Is that still happening today? Are there still people who have difficulty making that transition or opening up that door to the possibilities?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I get to see a little bit about that, in terms, because we're in a few different states. I think we're in 8 or 9 states now, and so there are different views of therapy at each of these places, and the ways people view therapy in New York tends to be a little bit different than even Miami. So I think that stigma is definitely still there, but it has decreased immensely, I think, the past few years. Like I mentioned before, it is common talk here in New York or in California.
Well, it's also kind of like the new hotness to be able to say, yeah, I saw my therapist. But in South Bend, Indiana, or way below Mississippi, might be something different, right?
No, very true. And even culturally too, there are a lot of cultures where that's still, hey, I'm going to focus, and I'll just rug through this, and it's a sign of weakness to show, that I have emotion. And I don't want people to think that I'm weak, so it's, from cultures and also just regionally, it's different, but I would say we're heading in the right direction, which is great. And a lot of it, I think, is just because people are opening the conversation. I think on even TV, I think you hear about more athletes more than ever. I think there's, I don't think you see of any athletes that do not have psychologists. You're almost at a disadvantage if you're not talking to a sports psychologist. So all these people and prominent figures in society are seeking therapy, which I think is amazing and helping really lower that stigma.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's very important when we look at these sports folks. They make a lot of money. I don't remember how many millions of dollars some of them are making, but then they still have these issues, these personal issues. So money can't always buy you peace and mental health, right? Sometimes you have to make that leap to do that. What are, in order for people to get set up with you, we have about 15 minutes left. What would you say to somebody? They have the ability to get in touch with you, to set up an appointment. Do they need to have insurance? Is it can somebody who is on disability or some other kind of government assistance, can they assist? What are some of the things that happen in your office that would make it comfortable for some of our listeners and viewers to want to come to you?
Sure. Now that's a great question. And actually at our clinics, in some of our cities, there is not insurance per se. However, there's a lot of people that use their insurance that come to us. One of, I think, the biggest things we do is help educate people on their benefits that they don't even know they have.
Oh.
Yeah. So, a lot of times people will call and, we'll let them know that, hey, we're not in network, but your insurance will actually cover, 70 to 80% of the fee. So a lot of what we do is educating people. But even outside of that, I would never say go to a therapist just based on the price of them. Mm-hmm. I think that could lead to a lot of troubling situations and also exhausting that search. And you might actually even spend more money in the process. I would always go with expertise over price. And if you cannot afford the therapist that you're looking for, there's a lot of times where that particular therapist trains somebody who might be way more affordable. And we have the same thing. We have a training program that, if you cannot maybe afford a specific therapist that you really want to see, that therapist might actually be directly supervising a trainee. And these trainees have their doctorates and masters. They're just looking for their license. So it's amazing to get real-time, supervision by expert therapists at a really, really great price. So, there's always ways around. And also there's also sliding scales. So, don't be scared by price. It's very possible that, their therapists have the ability to move down their price to certain prices.
Yeah, well, so when you start talking about pricing in New York, that I just hear cha-ching. So, but I also heard, don't gasp, I also heard you say that you have locations in other places as well. What are some of the other cities?
Oh, yeah. So we are in Miami, Florida, and digitally, by the way, too. So our home base are like where our offices are at these locations, but we see people throughout the state. California, we're in Portland, Oregon, Minneapolis, Minnesota, Princeton, New Jersey, more recently Chicago, Illinois, and Boston, Massachusetts, and we're just opening up shop in Seattle, Washington. So
every major metro.
Yeah, we're getting there. Yeah. So we'll see.
So now we've got only a couple of more minutes left in the show. What would you like to leave with our audience?
Sure. Yeah. So, I hope if anything, we've been able to just provide some, tools and to make this whole process of seeking therapy a little less overwhelming. I think that's a huge barrier, right? It's like when people finally get to the point of I need to seek therapy, then it's like a whole nother barrier of, oh my goodness, where do I look? And in this day and age, there's so many resources, which is amazing, but it's also, it has that caveat of, well, there's a lot of resources that might not be the best, right? Or might not be quality. So, what we've been trying to do this whole time is really just provide a place that people can go that they know they're going to receive quality experiences from well-trained professionals who are really personable and comforting to speak to. And
so as we start to close, we can set up an appointment with you, and during that appointment, we can do it live on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Now, is there a fee for that, or what do people have to do?
Yeah. So at first and foremost, I would recommend people to go to our site, Thriving Center of Psych. It's PSYCH. That tripped me up before I was in this industry too. So thrivingcenterofpsych.com and take our short questionnaire. It's about a 5-10 minute questionnaire that'll help our client coordinators match potential therapy seekers with the appropriate fit. And then after that, I would encourage them to have a 15-minute free consultation with their matches, and all of this is free. So I would at least tell them to kind of put their foot in the door, and even if they're not going to come with us, at least have the experience of speaking and find out what it's like to speak to a qualified practitioner.
Okay, so I'm putting this in the chat. It says Thriving Center of PSYCH.com.
Perfect.
Okay. And so what happened? Yeah, there it is. thrivingcenterofpsych.com. So people can go there, see what you're doing, get in touch with you. Now, do you have a book out or anything that we should be looking for? Or
No
it's
time
on its
for
way?
It's on its way. Don't hold your breath, but one day we'll see.
See, I think that's something that you can have your little earplugs in, and you can tape it as you're getting on the subway in New York or walking down the street. You could be talking the book into existence.
I like that. I'll try that.
Right? You can try it. Right. Those buses, and you find yourself that last car on the metro, and then you can just go do what you got to do. So closing remarks. So I'm really, really grateful that you came on, and this has been very, very interesting. And the work that you're doing is changing the quality of life of so many people. And just here in the state of Maryland, we're experiencing so many issues that young people are going through, where we're talking teenagers that are killing each other on the street, like the wild, wild west. And it's frightening, because that says to me that there's trauma that we're not talking about. There's some real psychological issues that are going on for these children to see no end to their pain. Right. And so, maybe you can spend some time, we can have an off conversation, but looking at some of these school systems and what's going on, because it's not just Baltimore, it's happening in a lot of communities where children have a lot of pain because of this pandemic and the impact it's had on their parents. So we can't forget our babies. And hopefully you have people within your organization that deal with young people, because they need help on so many levels. And it's not happening in many of the schools, and we're not addressing it in some of our churches either. Right. So that's a whole group of people that we need to address. And it's really frightening of what is happening in some of these households.
Oh, for sure. And not only that, but even, helping with parents in terms of, parent training in some senses, I think a lot of how they interact with their kids can make a big difference as well. So a lot of times when you see people who treat children, a big piece of it is treating, helping the parents, because they see the kid for only 45 minutes a week, and the parents are with the children, every day of the week. So.
Right. And how do you go about doing a paradigm shift? And because there's abuse happening sometimes that you don't even realize, they're keeping it quiet, right? They're hiding it under the rug. They're hiding the bruises. They're hiding the broken jaw. They're hiding the pain. And I don't know. I had this conversation with a friend of mine just a couple of weeks ago about what is happening in the households. And then today we were also talking with the person who was ahead of you earlier today, our first guest, talking about problems that some of these young people are having at home. So this is an issue I would love for the whole psychiatric, community to start looking at some of these schools. And it's not just urban, it's rural as well. The problems exist, and many of these children don't have a phone to be able to call and say they need help. They're not in an environment where they have the ability to get to someplace safe. There's no safe space for them. So we've got to, as a community, nationally, how we're going to address this problem, because it's huge. It is huge.
Yeah.
And it's frightening. So thank you so much. Give us some last words to wrap it up of, what we should be doing or something before you go away.
Yeah, sure. I guess the last thing I would say is, if you haven't tried speaking to someone, you should. There's no downside to it. And it could really make a big difference. So thank you so much for having me. I had a great experience. This has been awesome.
Dr. Alexander Alvarado, thank you so much for taking time. And let's stay in touch. And
Please.
We're going to circle back. I want you to circle back about this business with these young people. I think there's a whole conversation that needs to be had about that. So
definitely.
Thanks again. So you're not going to get rid of me that easy.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Alex Alvarado. And his program is really wonderful. We don't always want to deal with it about the issues that are going on in our households, but we need to address them. And, I'm not always one that wants to go over there and tell people my business, but sometimes I think we should probably do that so that we can get it off of us and we can keep moving forward. But thank you. And we'll be right back with our next guest, Irene Rollins. We'll be back in a moment. Hello and welcome back. Unfortunately, our guest is, we're trying to reach them. But in the meantime, I do want to talk about a couple of the things as a recap with the last guest, Dr. Alvarez. And so, Alvarado, too often we are really not looking at what's going on with our young people. And this is a big concern for many of us of what's happening in homes where parents are working double shifts, and we're having a lot of issues that we need to be able to deal with. So let's just make sure that we are actually doing what we need to do to help our loved ones and our friends. When you see a problem, and let's be real clear that it's not a mirage, and that we should be dealing with some of the issues, be it in the schools or be it in organizations where we can bring help to families. This is a very, very powerful program that he has, and it's national, and you can actually be in a city and call. And so you can be in Baltimore, or you can be in Miami or New York or wherever, but it is online. And so you can make a phone call and get help on the phone. And so many of us may or may not have assistance with internet connection, but you can go to a library and find a corner where they have their computers where you can go and get assistance. And as he said, you can have a face-to-face online, or you can have conversations on the phone. So we hope that you've enjoyed the show. We're really excited about how we're growing. Tonight we had 4 segments opposed to a couple. We started at 5 o'clock and we're taking it all the way to 9 o'clock if these folks can resolve whatever the issue is. But we're really excited that you have planned to join us. We know it's been a long evening, but we're really happy that you're here. And what we want to be able to do is bring you great entertainment and information that that you can get here. And we would love it if you would be so kind to send us an email and let us know if there are topics that you're interested in, or if you would like to appear on the show, or if you have someone that you would like to have them appear on the show. As well as we would love to be able to add you to our newsletter. We have advertising that's available in the newsletter. So you're welcome to be able to give us a call or an email. I'm going to put that in the chat. But we are very excited because we've had a lot of interest lately. So here we go. And I'm going to check with our producer, Katanya, and see if we have been able to get in touch with our next guest. And I thought this would be a really interesting interview. Her name is Irene Rollins, and she's passionate about the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health of all people. And she's a certified emotional intelligence coach. She loves to study human behavior, enabling her to understand a wide variety of people, guiding them to the best version of themselves through her teaching, writing, and coaching. And Irene's fervency to help others overcome their self-defeating habits comes from her life experience as an overcomer of alcohol addiction and trauma. So I'm going to take a little break and see if she has been able to get in touch. And if not, we're going to end the show. So hold on just a second. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're back, but we will not be able to have our next guest. Apparently, Miss Rollins had a problem and will not be able to join us. So this concludes our show for tonight. Please tune in next week and we'll have more great guests. Sorry you didn't get this last one. I was really looking forward to it, but that's okay. We'll see you next Tuesday. Take care, and a big thank you to Katanya Lester, our producer, and all the hard work that she gives us. And forward to seeing you next week. And be sure to take my email and send us notes if you need to. Take care. Bye-bye.
Dream of a land my soul is from. I heard a hand stroke on a drum. Shades of delight, go hue, rich as the night, Afro blue. There's an elegant boy with a beautiful girl. They're dancing with joy in an eloquent world. Shades of delight, go hue, it's rich as the night, Afro blue.